There we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Halloween edition, 2024 edition of the Plastow Zoning Board of Adjustment. Dee, would you call the roll?
Peter Belo,
I'm here.
Jim Unger,
Here.
Jonathan Gifford,
Present.
Michael Murray,
Here.
Jim O'Brien.
Present.
Okay. Attorney Ponziaco, would you be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You've been here enough. You're part of the family. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's do the minutes and then I'll read the other. So we have draft minutes from the August 29th, 2024 meeting. Does anybody have a motion on that?
I move we accept the meeting minutes from that meeting, please.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Unger seconds. Have we all read them?
Yes.
Okay, ready for a vote?
Any
Corrections?
No corrections?
Peter Belo,
Yes.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Jonathan Gifford, Michael Murray,
Yes.
Jim O'Brien.
Yes.
Your vote is 500.
Excellent. Okay, before we get going on tonight's hearings, I want to explain the procedure we go through here. Our meeting practice is that each public hearing will be opened in turn, one at a time. The applicant will present their case, the board will question, and the hearing will be open to the public for comment. Once everyone who wishes to be heard has been heard, that public hearing will be closed. Once a public hearing has been closed, there can't be any additional inputs or comments. The board will immediately deliberate on that application before opening another public hearing on any additional applications. There could be times where there's multiple applications that are so interrelated that the chair may decide to hear them simultaneously, but each will be deliberated separately. All motions regarding relief will be made in the affirmative to grant form for clarity and consistency. The format of the motion should not be considered indicative of how any member, including the maker of the motion or the second of the motion, might vote. Written notices of decision will be sent to the applicant and made available for public viewing within 5 business days. Per the New Hampshire RSA's laws, if any party of standing feels the board has made an error in their decision, they have 30 days to request a rehearing. No permits will be issued within that 30-day period. The board reserves the right to continue their deliberations on any matter if they feel need to consult with legal counsel. All decisions will be made in accordance with the New Hampshire RSA's. So I'll read this, but this doesn't apply to tonight. If we have less than a 5-member board, and we have 5 members tonight, the New Hampshire RSA's require that any motion for relief can only be granted by a favorable vote of at least 3 members of the board, as opposed to a simple majority of the members present at any meeting. Therefore, when there's less than a full board of 5 voting members present, the applicant's chances of approval could be considered diminished. When there are fewer than 5 voting members present, the applicant has the right to continue their application to the next available meeting in the hopes that there will be 5 voting members available to hear their application. If any applicant decides to proceed with less than a 5-member board, they do so at their own peril. If an applicant moves forward and does not prevail in their request for relief, the lack of a 5-member board will not be considered as grounds to request a rehearing. Continuation of...
You don't need to read that last
Yeah, I
one.
don't think you read that. Okay. I hope you all understand that.
Mr.
those
Chair, may
rules.
I address the gallery for a moment?
Oh, of course.
There's a lot of you here tonight, so I would respectfully request that you not talk back and forth with each other because it's very difficult for me to hear. There's a lot of you and the way the sound travels in the room, so I'd really appreciate it.
And also, before we go on, I'm going to make my almost most monthly plea, given that we have so many people in the audience, that because of the issues of how we have to run meetings when there's less than 5 members present, we're always looking for alternate members to help fill in when somebody's on vacation, somebody's sick, what have you. It's not a tremendous use of time or a sink of people's time. We meet once a month, and there's training one day once a year that's free. So.
There's also some online webinars too.
Oh, and there are online webinars and such, but so we're always looking for folks who are interested in becoming alternates. Okay, I've made my plea. Tonight, I'd like to change the order of the hearings. I think we'll take 24-11 first, followed by 24-12, and then go back to 24-08. Okay? You folks all ready? Okay. Dee, would you?
Case number 24-11, a request from Nicholas Rigatieri and Tessa Parziali Rigatieri for a variance from Article 5, Table 220-32F.C, paren 1, paren B, to construct a single-family dwelling on a lot with no frontage on a town right-of-way. The property is known as 0 Evergreen Rear, Tax Map 60, Lot 28, in the LDR zoning district. The applicants are the property owners of record.
And would the applicants please come up?
But I think he thought the first one was going first.
Yes.
He's what?
Charlie is representing her, Charlie Zilch is
Okay.
representing her, and he probably looked at the agenda and thought it would be a little later on.
So why don't you juggle 2 and 1?
Yeah, well, okay, we'll rejuggle it, okay?
You want me to do it?
Well,
I already.
We can do the other one, and then see
Yeah.
what happens.
But you might want to
Okay.
let him know that you're up next.
You might want to text him or something.
I did.
Okay.
okay. Okay, in that case, let's go with the 24-12.
Case number 24-12, a request from Mark Denoncourt for a variance from Article 5, Section 220-32I, to allow a shed to be placed 5 feet from the side property line where 15 feet is the minimum required setback. The property is located at 8 Massasoit Boulevard, Tax Map 38, Lot 24, in the MDR zoning district. The property owners of record are Mark L. Denoncourt, Margaret L. R. Denoncourt.
Come on up, make yourself comfortable. Either. Please speak into the microphone when you speak, but let her get everything up and running here.
Oh, I don't think it's on here. I don't know why it's not on here. It is in your packet.
Yeah. Oh, I see it. Yep.
Let me go grab it real quick. Just a second.
Well, this is the appropriate night for gremlins, isn't it? I hope we're not keeping anybody from servicing all the trick-or-treaters out there tonight.
Yeah, I'll have to eat all the extra candy now.
And I apologize. I was actually planning on bringing some candy in for everybody, and it just slipped my mind this afternoon, so me bad. Just wait for Dee to get back here. So is this your first time on the second floor?
Oh, well, I used to be part of the recreation department, and they used to be up there with Carly, and
Yep.
I was on the rec commission for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, same.
Sounds like a good alternate ZBA member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? So it's already here. Oh, you're kidding me. Come on. Yay. As good as we're going to get, folks.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's giving
Can
me.
you put those lights out, maybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's a little better.
Getting there. There you go.
Okay. So may we have your name and address, please?
My name's Mark Denoncourt. I live at 8 Massasoit Boulevard, Plastown, New Hampshire. Apologize, my wife's not here. She's a nurse and she just got called into work. So,
That's the way it works when you're
yeah,
when
she's,
you're nursing or a first responder, you know?
yeah, she's an OR nurse, yeah. So,
Okay, well, would you tell us, let's just start off with, what are you looking at doing?
I'm looking to place a shed on the right side of the property. If you're looking, if you can see the round circle, that's like where a pool is, so to the right of that, towards the end of the driveway, which is there's a deck around like where the pool area is, so it would be the shed would be going to the right of that of that area there. And if you want me to go up, I can point it out for you.
It almost has a silhouette of it right there in that picture, from what I can see.
Yeah, kind of. There was a swing set area there
Oh, okay.
before, and, the kids have grown, and so we've taken the swing set down, and it's gone, and it's pretty much the area where it's gonna go,
So
hopefully.
what's that on the, all the way at the top of your property, like on the left? Yeah,
Okay. What do you, up on the left? That,
No.
that? Or where?
yeah, where you were first.
But this,
Up.
right here is where the,
Yeah.
where the proposed shed is gonna be,
Okay,
right here,
yep,
okay? I have, there's a pool deck here, this is the property line here.
yep.
I think there's a letter in the proposal from this neighbor here, you know, allowing it and approving it. Right, so, and I was going, this is the property line here, there's trees along this tree line right here. There's a tree line, and so there'd be, it'd be separated and kind of blocked from a tree line. It would be, instead of not the 15 feet, it would be 5 feet.
So what's going on at the very top of your property, the very back of it? Seems like there's a lot of
Yeah,
empty space up there.
Right here,
Yeah,
that's the old existing shed. That was there when I bought the property. Yeah. And this here there's a tree, a big tree right here, actually half of it fell down. But there's a big tree here, and this property here, like from about this point here, slopes back and down. And over here is this area is like the septic tank and leach field. In that area. This is a pool. It's supposed to be a pool. It doesn't look like one because I think that picture came when we were replacing the pool. So that looks like sand maybe, but this is a deck around the pool. The driveway's here. And the shed would be about right there and going back this way.
Okay, that makes sense. Board members, any questions here at the beginning?
Nope.
Okay. So one of the things we do for any variance request is we ask the applicant to go through the 5 criteria for a variance
Yep.
that you wrote out. So I guess I'd appreciate it if you go through those. Do you have a copy, by the way?
I believe.
Oh, perfect.
I'm not sure what you look.
This
Page
section right here.
Oh, yeah.
4, yeah.
Yeah. Is this it right here?
Yes. Okay, so the proposed variance won't be contrary to the public interest because? That was a prompt.
Well, it's not in harm's way. It's not near the front edge of the property. It's kind of a little bit out of sight, you know. And I got a letter, I think there's a letter of written approval by that neighbor on that side.
Yep. And number 2, the spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved?
Yeah, well, the ordinance is to keep approved space between the property lines with no objections from the neighbors.
Actually, by the way, am I seeing that your neighbor
On which way?
has a shed, the one to your right, has a shed right up against your property line?
That?
Yeah.
That's been there for, I don't know, 15 years, something, at least.
That's good. That's cool. That's cool. Okay. Substantial justice, there's substantial justice in granting the variance?
Well, it's no interest to the general public, but just for myself, for storage and basically that's all. We don't have much storage in the house, so we need some to put some of our junk.
I hear you. I have plenty of storage. I still need more.
Yeah, I know. Right?
The values of the surrounding properties won't be diminished?
No, I mean, it's going to increase my value of my property, the taxes, and if mine go up, that means, I guess, it might have other property go up, the other properties go up in value.
Generally, yeah.
Right.
And literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship.
What was that again?
The number 5, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship.
It's, where it is, there is a tree line separating properties, and it would basically be blocked from that, even from them seeing most of the shed.
Okay. Board members, comments, questions?
Are you pouring a pad, or is this going to be up
No.
on blocks?
No, this is one of it's a drop in place.
Just,
Is there any other areas of the property that you'd be able to place it?
Like I said, I mean, we couldn't put it anywhere over here. It's a tough spot. Then here is like the septic and leach field area, right? And then back here is the back property here starts to slope backwards and down towards.
Right.
There's a brook way down in the back here. You can see it right there, I think. A brook, and it runs across, and everything kind of just starts dropping about, partway through. And there's a big tree here that we couldn't put it over there.
You may, wise to not have a big, heavy delivery truck drive over your leaching field,
No.
or you could end up
No,
needing
right,
one.
right, exactly, right.
okay. I see you have your letter here from Cindy Fuller.
That's, yeah, that's this property here.
Yep. Okay. Do we have any letters or emails on this?
There was a letter submitted with the application dated September 8th, 2024, to whom it may concern. I, Cindy Fuller of 12 Massasoit Boulevard, Plastow, New Hampshire, give our neighbors Mark and Margaret Denoncourt of 8 Massasoit Boulevard, Plastow, New Hampshire, permission to place a shed on their property no closer than 5 feet to my property line, but inside the 15 feet allowed town restriction. Thank you, Cindy Fuller.
Any questions, comments?
Anybody out there?
I'm sorry?
Anybody out there?
I'm going to. I just want to make sure
No, I'm
you're
covered.
good. Is there anybody here tonight speaking in favor of this? Is anybody speaking against it or have neutral questions? I guess not.
There were no other emails or letters received.
Okay. We always give folks a chance, either way. Anything before we close this hearing?
No, pretty straightforward.
Okay, then I guess we'll close this hearing and we'll go into deliberation right now.
Okay,
Yeah, you're welcome to hang out with us or not, your choice.
okay, I'm not sure the process, so
You can go ahead and have a seat if you want to wait and listen to them, or you can race home and catch them on TV. Otherwise, you still get a written decision in the mail within 5 business days.
okay.
But there's no more interaction from you at this point.
Right.
So if you just want to hang around for 5 minutes and see what happens.
Oh, it'll take 5 minutes? Oh, I thought, okay.
Well, I mean, I'm guesstimating
Oh, wait,
here.
here or back here?
Maybe
Back
6.
back at your chair would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, would somebody like to make a motion?
Yes. I move to grant the request for variance from Article 5, Table 220-32I, to allow a shed to be placed 5 feet from the side property line for the parcel located at 8 Massasoit Boulevard with the following conditions. The applicant must show proof positive to the building inspector that the shed will not be any closer than 5 feet to the property line, or the applicant will need to have the location of the shed certified by a licensed land surveyor for compliance.
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion before we go down the variance criteria?
Pretty straightforward. I think it's a typical matter of very small building lots in Plastow.
Small building lots, what looks like it might be a great location turns out to have slopes issues and a large tree in the way. And then on the left of the property is that's that pesky septic system that we all have. So it wouldn't be contrary to the public interest because it is still out of the way. It's pretty far back from the neighbor's house. And in fact, the neighbor might have to look through their own shed in order to see it. Spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved. Well,
Yes.
it's really not close to any other structure other than the abutter's house. It's still a good ways away from the abutters. I'm sorry. It's close to the applicant's house. It's a ways away from the abutter's house. So I think this really isn't relevant here. Substantial justice is done in granting it, because really, if we didn't grant, there's no interest to the general public to be gained on this. Values of surrounding properties won't be diminished. Definitely not. Helps people clean up their properties and, put toys and tools inside a nice structure is a good thing. And as for the denying it would result in unnecessary hardship. Yeah, I mean, just the layout of what's there now and the slopes on the back of the property. Make it difficult to place it at any other location. We all agree on those?
I do.
D, we're good, ready for the vote.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Jonathan Gifford,
Yes.
Michael Murray,
Yes.
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Bealow.
Yep.
Your vote is 500.
When D says 5 minutes, she usually means it.
It's almost a warning to them.
Now, has Charlie arrived? So he's here for the third.
He's here for the 2411.
Is somebody else representing the third 24-8? Oh, you're here, okay.
Everybody's here for 24-8.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to give it the 3 or 4 minutes for Charlie to arrive. Okay.
I think she's already done it.
He probably
You are
drives
the
a little
boss,
more.
right? He has to listen.
He's gonna get a speeding ticket.
Let's all text Charlie.
You can't speed through the town center with all the trick-or-treaters out there.
You're all set. You're good to go.
Thanks. Have a good night. Happy Halloween.
I've been writing with this pen for the last month,
Really?
and you can't
just
see
about
me.
it?
You can't see it. We're referring to it as the magic pen.
I'm not going to call the recess. It's too difficult getting him back. So I'm just going to sit here and,
See if you like how that writes. I might have a gaylord of those somewhere in my building.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if I can grab 100 pack for you.
Thank you for being gracious.
Oh, there we go. We know he doesn't text
we don't
and
have a
drive.
parking lot.
So he's-
Excuse me?
He says it's almost to the parking lot. We don't have a parking lot.
Yeah, we don't have a parking lot.
Not sure where he's going.
Yeah.
Give him a big round of applause when he comes in. I've always told him, you be here at 6:30, you never know.
I remember this one.
Yeah. She just,
So I assume all these people aren't here for.
Guys ready?
I am so embarrassed. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Good evening.
When you're in a hurry,
Pardon
stay
me?
off of 125. I think I was behind the slowest people ever.
would you like me to reread 2411?
I would.
Okay. Of course, now I have to pronounce Tessa's last name twice, but.
You can do it.
Case number 24-11, a request from Nicholas Rigatieri and Tessa Pazziali Rigatieri for a variance from Article 5, Table 220, 32F, C, paren 1, paren B, to construct a single-family dwelling on a lot with no frontage on a town right-of-way. The property is known as 0 Evergreen Rear. tax map 60, lot 28 in the LDR zoning district. The applicants are the property owners of record. I need to ask you to be right on those microphones, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have this on the overhead?
Or the pictometry.
I bought some 11 by 17s.
They have a
Okay.
copy of the
We've
plans.
got that.
I'm thinking the plan.
Plan, okay.
So while she's getting that up.
Oh, yes.
So if this gets approved, you're going to keep the number 0? That'd be so cool.
Yes, can I? I don't know.
911 will not allow me to do
Oh.
that, sorry.
Well, that's too bad.
Maybe it'll be an A.
Plus it gives me time to catch my breath from running into the building, okay?
Doesn't that make you feel old, right?
Yes, a little bit. Running up the steps to City Hall.
That's the pictometry. That's gotta be the plan.
Yeah, the plan.
And there is a pointer on
There we
the
go.
desk right there.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I think I remember this from 2 years ago.
Oh.
Yes, it
Yes.
was January of '22, I believe is when the case was heard. So Charlie Zilch from SCC and Associates here with Tessa Rigateri for a variance request that had been granted, as we said, 2 years ago. As you can see from the plan that we have up here, this is her property. It's a landlocked property located behind 2 Evergreen Drive. The property is identified as stated as tax map 60, lot 28. The site's an existing 6.21 acre lot of record that is situated just north of Timberland Road, west of Evergreen Drive, and south of Collins Court. So I'm sure everybody kind of has a awareness of where this is. So this property and the abutting properties are entirely within the low-density LDR zone. The land has long been held by the town of Plastow, who had acquired the property by tax collection deed from the last known owner, which was Nicholas White. So the town had it for quite a while. The property, in 1999, the abutting land to the east was subdivided and Evergreen Drive was laid out. That's when Evergreen was created as subdivision. As part of that subdivision proposal, a 25-foot wide access easement was established on the west side of Evergreen Drive to the benefit of this subject parcel. This access easement is from Evergreen Drive and runs through tax lot 68-60-32-10. So you can see there was a fairly short little right-of-way that was left from Evergreen Drive to this property. So in 2002, the property owners to the west of this lot, both tax lots 60-24 and 25, also landlocked parcels owned by the Shepherds at that time, were successful in obtaining access from this easement through the subject parcel to their land. This was done through special town meeting, and plans were prepared delineating the easement through the subject parcel and their land as well. My understanding is that variances were granted to allow the Shepherds to build homes on both of these landlocked parcels, utilizing the now shared access easement off of Evergreen Drive. In 2019, in anticipation of selling the subject property, the town of Plastow successfully submitted a petition to quiet title supported by this boundary survey plan that we have up on the screen right now. In 2020, Nicholas and Tessa purchased the property from the town with the intent of building a single-family dwelling on the site. Just after the land was purchased, a disposal system design was prepared and approved for a 4-bedroom dwelling to be located just south of the existing shared driveway adjacent to tax lot 6860-32-10. I think that's the next plan. I don't know where that one.
Oh,
might
you know
be.
what? I scanned it in. I've got the large size one here, though.
You have paper copies, you can probably just see it on that plan.
You had only given the 11 by 17 in this size. And that's what I copied. Do you have the full set there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. But it's not scanned in.
Do we really need this?
Probably not. It just basically, what I can describe it, it just basically shows coming in off that easement and then to the south of the easement or to the left of it is basically where they propose their home. septic, and well, all
Can
fairly
you-
close to that.
Can you maybe show with the
existing-
pointer?
Sure. So it was proposed right in this area here.
There is a plan in our package.
Yep, that's exactly it right there. So as you can see on that plan that you're looking at, there's a generous building envelope in which we cited the home, the septic, and the well.
That's right, you can't see the laser pointer back there, sorry.
Yep,
Can you show it one more time, Mr. Zilch?
sure. So it was this area right here.
Hold on, there's a couple more people coming to look.
Okay. Right in the area, right there.
There's wetlands further to the south, correct?
Yes, yep. This is the wetland that was mapped on the property. So the easement, as you can see, basically bisects the lot. And this is the area that Jay chose for building the home. That's where they want it to be. But there's nothing that precludes them from building on the north side. It's all good, high, dry, developable land. This is just the area that they chose. It's convenient to Evergreen Drive. We've done our test pits there, good viable septic area, and it worked out well for them. So we had a state-approved septic design, still state-approved. That original plan, still valid. And so that's basically it, what they're looking to do. So the proposal is for the property is basically obtain the necessary approvals to construct one single-family home on the lot. And obviously, one of the necessary permits that we need is the variance to build on a lot with no frontage. So that was granted by a 5-0 vote back in January 2022. It's obviously expired now, and so that's the reason why we're back here.
Okay. Probably a relevant question, but I'll ask anyhow. How come the driveway off of Evergreen isn't fully within the easement?
I'm assuming that they probably didn't stake it or have it surveyed. They kind of assumed that's where the driveway was supposed to go, and it's just one of those things. It's just slightly outside of the easement as it crosses that lot that fronts Evergreen. But it appears that the rest of the driveway through the easement, through the subject property is pretty much where it needs to be.
Okay.
So there's no other relief needed for this. The house, as proposed, and the septic and the well, they meet all siting and state and local requirements. So it's just the variance for the frontage.
Board members, any questions?
I seem to remember
Pretty
this.
much exactly the same as last time, right?
Deja vu.
No changes at all?
No changes whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the 5 criteria are exactly as they were.
Right.
Well, why don't we go through those?
Sure.
Give me a second to open them up. Okay, let's go through those, Mr. Zilch.
Okay. Number 1, the proposed variance will not be contrary to the spirit, to the public interest because, and our response is by granting the variance to allow the rigatories the full productive use of the property as intended by acquisition as a separate freestanding parcel of land. Access to the lot will be provided by a shared driveway from Evergreen Drive. All proposed construction of the home, septic system, well and driveway will be to current standards in regards to design and permitting. The proposal is for one single-family dwelling on a lot that exceeds all other applicable sizing and siting requirements within an area surrounded by single-family dwellings. All considered, there will be no negative effect to the general health, welfare, and safety of the general public. Number 2, the spirit and the intent of the ordinance is preserved because the response is the intent of the ordinance as it relates to the frontage requirement is to keep is to ensure adequate separation of homes and to establish density in keeping with the spirit of the overlying zone. This zone, LDR, requires the largest land area, 2.53 acres, to qualify for a building lot. This lot, as it stands, is 6.21 acres and is comprised of a generous, contiguous upland buildable area. In regards to the driveway, this land has an access that would not endanger or disrupt traffic flow, nor does it, as a single-family home, substantially add any traffic volume. In this particular case, the spirit and intent can be met provided that the variance is granted. Number 3, there is substantial justice in granting the variance because this property is only limited by the lack of frontage. All the other applicable lot sizing and siting requirements can easily be met. This property is similar to other properties abutting it where there is no frontage and access is through other parcels. The owner is only asking for construction of one single-family residential dwelling on this generously sized property. Denial of the variance would require finding a means of creating a town-accepted roadway to serve the site. This alternate proposal, if even feasible, would result in considerably more site impact, require maintenance for the town, as well as more intensive development to offset the costs. There is substantial justice in granting the variance, which would allow for a reasonable use of the property in keeping with the surrounding uses. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished because, and the response is, granting the variance would allow for plans to be submitted for consideration of one single-family residential dwelling as allowed and supported in this design, in this zone rather. The proposed driveway to service the dwelling will be designed to meet the specifications for emergency access and will consider all environmental impacts as well. The proposed dwelling, septic system, and well will meet all siting and design requirements. With this modest request for an additional dwelling within a residential neighborhood, it can be assured that there will be no diminution of surrounding property values. And lastly, little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Our response to that is that denial would result in unnecessary hardship if little enforcement of the provision of the ordinances were applied, meaning requiring 200 feet of frontage where none exists for a lot that has a potential access that does not adversely affect the neighboring properties, nor does it diminish the spirit and intent of the ordinance, creates an unnecessary hardship. Although the objectives and purpose of the ordinance can be demonstrated, the general requirements with respect to frontage requirements cannot, particularly when given the history of the lot as a separate tax lot and assessed as such. It is the intention of the owner to only construct one dwelling on this lot. Granting of the variance would only allow for the full productive use of the site as the surrounding property owners enjoy.
So that driveway is in place already,
Correct.
serving somebody beyond your,
2.
two others
Yes.
beyond that property. So I guess we can assume that the fire and police department are okay with that, with the access.
Yes. So like I said, in 2002, that driveway was created to serve those 2 lots out back, and variances were granted for them.
Any other questions, folks?
He'll call when it's time for you to ask questions or make statements. Correct. Correct.
Okay. Dee, do we have any emails on this?
No emails or letters were submitted.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak in favor of this? I need you to come up to a microphone.
Actually, let's see.
Dee, would you like us to step back?
Yeah,
or-
why don't we, just move the microphone to the side.
Here you go.
And I'll grab it. I'll just stand.
And would you please tell us your name and address?
My name is Elizabeth Costa. I live at 4 Evergreen Drive. We are one of the neighbors who uses that easement. We have police and fire going easy access. I welcome a neighbor with another set of eyes. Great for property values. I wholeheartedly support this. I was sitting behind Tessa when she bought the property, and she was quite excited. My husband and I were very excited to have someone buy that land. And I feel as though she'll be a welcome addition and our property values will go up.
Any chance, do you think she could maybe become an alternate to the ZBA?
Could be, maybe I'll work on her.
That might sound a little bit inappropriate in this
Oh, I'm
part of the
sorry, you're right.
discussion.
You're right. I was asking Ms. Costas if they did.
My opinion, Dee. So I do hope that you'll do this. I know that the neighbors at 6 were here at the last variance meeting and were in support of this. And we would welcome her to our little private area of Evergreen Drive.
Does anyone else have comments? Come on up.
My name is Lawrence Hester.
I'm sorry, could I ask you to spell your last name for me, please?
Yes, Hester. Can they hear me? Do I have to push it?
No,
No, just, the
Yeah,
thing
my
is,
name-
the thing is, the microphone
You need to
doesn't
be
feed.
closer to it, that's all.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's for
The
TV
microphone only
audience.
feeds a TV feed.
Okay, I'm trying to be silent. Usually I'm a little bit louder.
Oh, we
But to all-
appreciate loud.
Today you need to be louder.
Okay, to all you board members.
I'm sorry, I still need you to spell your last name for me, please.
Hester, Hester,
And the first name again was?
Lawrence,
And what is your address?
171 Abbott Street, Lawrence, Mass.
171, I'm sorry, Abbott?
Street. Lawrence, Mass.
ABBOTT?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here on behalf of Alex Cepeda in regards to Evergreen Ave.
Do you have documentation that you're here on their behalf?
He's here.
Oh, okay,
The family's here.
okay. What's the name of the person?
Alex Cepeda,
And the spelling on that one, please?
Cepeda, if I'm correct.
And it was 2 Evergreen.
That's correct.
Thank you.
One of the questions my client has is in regards to the easement in his structure, which is naturally pre-existing non-conforming, which you can't take that away. That structure was there. But there's an easement for that 25 feet, which is his property. My main question is, did the town acquire that by eminent domain? Number one.
Mr. Zilch, do you know how that property was acquired?
Are we talking about the easement, the establishment of the easement?
I think if I can interpret, I think he means the property that easement crosses,
Well, which
right?
Or our subject property?
Not
which
subject.
property is number 2 on that map?
The property on number 2 is to the left
On
on
the
the site
street?
plan, on the cuttle sack of the radius.
You're talking this piece here?
That's correct.
Okay, so the
And then
the
there's
one
a-
from which the easement goes through?
That's correct.
Okay,
And there's a 25-foot easement there, and
correct.
that's some land. And if it's taken, if the town took it by eminent domain, then there needs to be compensation to my client, if I'm correct. You just can't take somebody's land.
So the easement was established when they subdivided and created Evergreen Lane or Drive.
Okay,
And so that easement was created as part of that subdivision plan, allowing access to this landlocked parcel.
yeah,
It was
but
part of that plan.
but that's why we're back here, because those 2 years were gone, and then.
Well, that easement was already established and in place probably prior to your client buying that property. So when he bought the property, the easement was already there.
Are you
in the
saying that,
driveway.
are you saying that it goes with the land?
It
Is
goes
it-
with the
is it-
land,
is it-
correct.
But regardless of that, nobody can take whether it went before or after when he bought it. If the town took it, whenever they took it in 2020,
No,
If
no, the
I'm
easement's been
not
there
mistaken,
since-
wasn't that part of the original subdivision
It
plan?
is, it is.
So that existed when your client's lot was created.
And that was
In
in
2000.
2000?
That existed as
2000.
part of the creation of
The
your
easement
client's
stays with
lot.
the property until forever. The easement never goes away. That property
I'm
always
sorry,
has
it
an
was
easement.
1999.
1999.
99. 2002 is when they
differ on
petitioned
that.
for the.
My client is not in any opposition to, granting a variance for frontage. That's not
Well, I-
uncommon in
I
any
have an
community.
easement to his property on my deed and he has it. When he bought it, actually, I told your realtor I was putting a house up there. And I told the listing agent, so they should have done their due diligence and told them I already had a building permit to put a house back there. I called the listing agent and told them, I'm gonna put a house back there, so you should tell the new buyers I have a variance.
But that's on a
Just FYI.
subdivision plan.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
the easement's
It was
there.
part of your client's lot when they subdivided
We'll
that.
we'll research it just a little bit more, but I can't believe that we're creating a new lot. The time for the 2 years, nobody acted on it. They didn't do anything on it.
When he purchased
So-
the property,
Hold on.
you had an easement.
Hold on, just hang on. Excuse me.
Yeah, but when you have an eminent domain, whether it's an easement or not,
It's not.
It wasn't
on their
taken by
domain.
eminent domain.
Your client's lot did not exist.
No, but what I'm
They
saying-
made a subdivision
I know
and
what
it
a
was
sub-
part of the subdivision. No one took anything.
I know what a subdivision is.
Right.
Believe me.
Okay.
Let me just get back on my thinking before I was interrupted, that I know things go at certain time with the land, with the easement. But once another purchaser purchased that, that doesn't mean that it's guaranteed.
No, it stays with, an easement stays, no matter who owns that land.
Okay, so.
Like,
my-
there's an easement across my land to maintain a natural gas pipeline. If I sold my property tomorrow to somebody else, that easement stays there.
Right.
It's there forever.
That's on
Yeah,
the plan.
well, actually, because that's a utility easement. Any utility company.
Actually, it's not a utility, it's an interstate pipeline. It's not a little feeder thing down the street. This is like 32 inches in diameter, buried 6 feet down. It goes to Sable Island, Canada.
At any rate, that's one of the biggest questions with my client's concern, and I don't think it would be disfavorable for a frontage granted, but I would suggest that whoever your legal counsel is, run that by them, just so that my client is relieved that, his land's just not being taken away.
Well, you have a subdivision plan of Evergreen Circle. It's on there. I mean, I'm just speaking from past experience, working for a land
I don't see
surveyor.
the whole.
Mr. Chair, I would
subdivision.
note that easement already exists to service two other properties that have houses
Yes.
built on them back there.
And dates from 1999.
Correct.
So I'm not taking
was
this,
the
I'm not taking this to my lawyer. I'm not taking the ZBA lawyer.
What is the page for the book and page?
I don't, Mr. Zilch, do you have the book and page?
I'll do a little bit more research on that.
Okay.
I believe I'm looking at the correct one. It's page 6074.
60,
I'm
70,
sorry, it's book 6074, page 2792.
and that would be the deed? The subdivision?
It's Tessa's current deed. It references,
The subdivision plan references D 27575.
right.
D275. Okay, thank you.
Hold on a second. Thank you. Mr. Zilch, would you be adverse to giving him your contact information in case he had
not at
another
all.
question about that?
Not at all.
Okay. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody else speaking in favor or against this proposal? Hearing nothing, do you have any final words? Mr. Zilch?
Thank you, though.
Questions, comments, folks?
Kind of played this once before. Matter of fact, our 5 criteria is written down for us right here.
Yeah. Okay, I guess with that, I'll call this hearing to a close and we'll deliberate on it momentarily.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, would anybody care to make a motion?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
I move to grant the request for a variance from Article 5, Table 220-32F, Section C1B, to allow a single-family home to be built on a lot without the minimum required 200 feet of frontage on a public right-of-way for the property known as 0 Evergreen Rear, Tax Map 60, Lot 28, with the following conditions. All zoning requirements for the construction of a single-family dwelling shall be met. The applicant shall make application for a building permit within 90 days.
Second.
Thank you very much. Well,
Could I ask you to take the conversation? Thank you.
so this is identical to the last time we considered this 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. It's not contrary to the public interest. That entranceway is already there. It's already in use serving 2 other properties. Spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved. We have a 6+ acre property. There's a lot of elbow room. We're far above the 2.5 roughly acre minimums there. Substantial justice in granting this variance. If we didn't grant this variance, the general public gains nothing, and these people get zero use of their land, even though the driveway already goes across their land to 2 other properties and 2 other homes. I mean, that'd be a gross injustice. Value of surrounding properties will not be diminished. I don't see how it would be. Again, you got a 6+ acre, tons of elbow room, be another nice house in the neighborhood. It won't be hurting property values there. Literal enforcement of the provision would result in unnecessary hardship. Kind of absolutely, that access way is already there, feeding 2 other houses. There apparently no other way to get to that property except using the existing driveway, which all seem to be in agreement of. So yeah, this is something we should grant. Anybody else have final comments before we close this?
Pretty much the same.
Okay. Dee, would you call the vote?
Jonathan Gifford,
Yay.
Michael Murray,
Yes.
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Belo,
Yep.
Jim Unger.
Yes.
Your vote is 5-0-0.
We have any other cases tonight?
Yeah. Continued from August 29th and September 26th, 2024. Case number 24-08, a request from Strategic Real Estate Management LLC for a variance from Article 5, Table 220, 32B.B, to allow a parcel to be used as a private parking facility to store up to 61 axle trailers in the same area formerly occupied by the former State Park and Ride. The property is located at 45 Westville Road, Tax Map 26, Lot 36, in the C1 zoning district. The property owner of record is 45 Westville Road Realty LLC.
You okay with the names, Dee? Okay. Making sure.
They should state them for the record, but
For the
I got
record.
it.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Patricia Pansiaco for Strategic.
I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit louder.
I thought I was
That
doing
doesn't
fine.
amplify it. That goes out over cable
Okay,
and also is a recording for me to be able to verify for minutes.
okay.
And to be perfectly honest, I'm looking at you and I'm having a hard time hearing you. Those people in back, you have no
I'll have
hope.
to yell. Okay. Patricia Pansiaco for Strategic Real Estate Management LLC. I'm here this evening with Jim Hanley from Civil Consultants, Cabot Smith and his brother, and Brian Rempert from RPF Environmental.
Can I get a spelling on Brian's name, please?
It's BRIANREMPERT.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, my client owns 3.8 acres in the C1 zone. It's located at 45 Westville Road. We have 659 feet of frontage. We're 600 feet from Route 125. The rear approximate 1/3 of the site is a wetland. The remaining portion is paved, and that is along the frontage. It was previously used by the state as a park and ride. All kinds of vehicles were parked there. The B&M Railroad is located behind the property. The trains go by 10 times a day in the morning and the evening. To the north, there are numerous commercial uses directly across Westville Road. There are other commercial uses and mixed uses, some residential condos. There's a commercial warehouse in the area, a plastics manufacturer, and a professional office. Now, since we've been here last time, Jim Hanley has updated the plan, so I think it might be best to go over that. That was important for the board.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultant. So as you know, this is our third time in front of you, so I'm not going to get into all the technical details of the plan set. I'll kind of give you a quick overview here, and then I'm going to discuss the what we've done to attempt to address all of the comments that you have made over the last,
Mr. Hanley, can I ask you to get a little closer to that microphone as well, please?
bet.
Thank you.
Okay.
You can move it closer to you.
Okay. Okay, so just to recap, Route 125 is in this direction here. The general traffic flow is down Westville Road from Route 125, a dedicated entrance. We laid out the site so that tractor trailers could come in, then back into any of these spaces that are here. And then we have a dedicated exit out of Westville, out of the exit drive onto Westville Road, and that's going to be a right turn only. Again, Pat mentioned that a large portion of the site is an existing wetland or pond. And so since we first came to you, we got some good feedback, and we've made some changes to the plan to try to address the comments that we got. I'm just going to kind of run through all of those so that we're on the same page here. So when we came the first time, you did have some comments specific to the hours of operation. That was obviously a contentious or a sticking point, I guess. One thing we were able to do, and we presented to you at the previous meeting, was that the hours of operation, we've added note 16 on our plan. It was at the time 24/7. We've now gone from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. So we won't be active during the middle of the night. We know that that was something, and the developer worked closely with Amazon to try to get that relief, and he was successful in doing so. There was also quite a bit of discussion about security in facilities for security personnel. So you can see in this general area here, we made this modification and presented this to you last time, but I just kind of want to revisit this so that you can see that we have provided a proposed 12 by 12 guard station and a proposed porta potty for facilities for the security personnel. We've also added on this sheet, there was some question about how the fencing, where the front fencing would be, and we've coordinated with Amazon, and they were able to provide us with a fencing detail that was added to sheet 4. I'll try to just run through to here on this. So this was a detail that Amazon has used in the past for security, and that's what we're proposing here. So essentially, we got good feedback during that first day. We made quite an effort to work with Amazon to come back to you with some improvements, which we think we were able to achieve. Having said that, the second time around, we also got some pretty decent feedback from you.
Actually, before you leave this,
Sure.
why is the acoustic fencing listed as being temporary?
Acoustic noise mitigation fence.
It says temporary site screen.
Oh, it's only temporary in the way that it's set into the ground. One of the discussions we had was that you could have a situation in this kind of use where a tractor trailer would back up, hit it. We want to be able to not have to be digging holes every time that happens, so that they're actually set on feet as opposed to set in post into the ground. So they use the term temporary. The intent is to comply with the plan and have the fencing there permanently, but it is removable so that if and when it gets nicked, we can replace it.
So when we have like a good old-fashioned nor'easter or God forbid
Absolutely.
a hurricane,
Yeah.
how many hundred feet down the street does that fence end up?
Well, so I'm not a structural engineer, right? But I do know that they have used this in the Northeast in the past.
Just
and
sitting on the ground.
well, without a doubt, there may have to be some maintenance, but we're not shying away from that fact. But the flip side of that is that if we have these in a position where they're put into the ground permanently, it's more of an issue to try to fix them on a regular basis, where these we could adjust as needed if and when they get hit, or if and when we have some sort of wind event. This is consistent with what was provided previously at the last meeting, so that certainly hasn't changed. But to be clear, the intent is to have a fence on site as requested as we move through for the site. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to get this back here. Okay, so with that noted, there's obviously a lot of interest in the noise, and we have Brian from RFP who will address that. One item that we have proposed is an acoustic, they call it an acoustic noise mitigation fence, screening that we actually attach to the fence. And so what we're proposing is that this acoustic screening goes on the fence along the entire property frontage. The plans have been updated with that. That detail we just saw has been updated with that, and Brian will be able to give you some more information on that. We've also added a note. There was again a bit of discussion about the number of trips per day and not having that information on the plan. So we added note 22, which says use will be limited to an average of 14 trailer drop-off or pickups per day. As you know, the site is an existing, parking lot. It was the old DOT park and ride. There is sufficient site lighting on site, so we're not proposing any additional lighting, but there is sufficient lighting. There's no increase in impervious surface, and therefore we're not proposing any adjustments to the drainage. The drainage system has been inspected, and a stormwater management plan has been prepared for that.
Spill controls.
And we've also provided some information on potential spill controls if and when that were to happen.
There's a full plan.
So with that said, there was also some discussion about the traffic. This is a bit of a challenge for us. We know intuitively that 14 additional tractor trailer trips per day, 14 in, 14 out, 28 different additional trips on a road that has approximately 4,000 trips is a minuscule amount of additional traffic. Granted, it's tractor trailers, so it's different than passenger cars, but at the end of the day, it's a small increase in traffic. We did get some feedback at the last meeting relative to the information we provided to assess our traffic. So we took another stab at it. We took and provided an additional supplemental traffic memo. And what that did is that looked at what could actually fit on the site. We did a concept plan that was prepared by the people that marketed the property. And that concept plan showed a 2,647 square foot bank, as well as two 6,000 square foot retail uses. Just kind of gives you a broad picture of what could actually be put on this site. That would demand 72 parking spaces and would have an average weekday, average daily trip of more than 1,000 trips per weekday. So that just puts it into comparison that if the concern is traffic, this doesn't generate much. There's also been some discussion about exhaust and emissions. While the bigger vehicles do have more emissions, it is highly regulated, obviously. All the vehicles will be inspected, and they have to be inspected to be on the road. And it certainly won't have as much as 1,000 vehicle trips per day. With that being said, I don't know if you have any questions specific to site or specific to traffic that I might be able to help you out with. I just want to point this out here that we did add this note right here that just indicates that the acoustic noise mitigation fence and curtain will be provided along the portion of the fence that's along the property. And I think what you're going to hear from Brian is that although we meet the noise ordinance based on the study that we've done, this is kind of a belt and suspenders approach. We know this is something that the abutters feel strongly about, you guys feel strongly about. So in an attempt to try to address this as much as we can, we've gone through the process of researching this product and Brian will be able to tell you more about it. So with that, I'll turn it back to Pat.
So one quick question.
Yeah.
So there was really two fences. There's a chain link like fence that, thumb in the air kind of thing. So I'm thinking of wind. So would block 10% of the wind coming through because you got these big openings. And against that is a solid acoustic thing, which will fully block the wind. So for every, again, to somebody else's point here, there's a nor'easter, it's not going through a chain link fence. It'll be stopped by that.
Yeah.
The only fences I've ever seen set up like that are purely chain link fences. And when you put a barrier on that chain link fence, you're into a whole different ballgame for wind.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it's, I understand the point. I don't think it's something that can't be designed into the restraint at the bottom of the fence. I mean, it's part of site plan review. If we're fortunate enough to get there, we certainly could provide some sort of calc that would show the overturning for 100-mile-an-hour wind or whatever it might be. I mean, this is not the first time someone has used this. And if they use it throughout the country, like the wind is the wind, right? I mean, we get it here in New England, they get it down in Florida, they get it in Texas.
Yeah, I
So
think
we could provide that information
have
if
to be
that's
some way of securing that base on
Yeah.
at least the side.
Without a
that
doubt, yeah.
Has the noise barrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because part of what we're looking at is public safety. And that's
Yeah.
public safety along a sidewalk.
So one of the reasons I'm a little nervous about that is going back to my misspent youth. I went to college in Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York in winter gets what they call lake effect storms come up
Yep.
from Lake Ontario. So you get, 40, 50 mile an hour winds and snow. Snow is going horizontal in that. And I actually, while I was on campus, the chain link fence around I think it was our tennis courts, one winter, and the fence was permanently into the ground, right? The stanchions were in the ground. During a lake effect snowstorm, the little openings in that chain link fence filled up with snow, and then the whole thing went over. And here we're talking about something that isn't even into the, permanently mounted into the ground. That's why I'm a little concerned.
Okay.
Well, that is true. Assuming it's fully used, yes.
And
I'm
so,
sorry, I didn't get the name for the comment.
So just to finish up on that point, I think what you're going to hear from Brian at RFP is that the acoustic curtain is not required to meet the bylaw. It was an effort to address the question and concerns that the board and the abutters had. If you feel that strongly, we could certainly not have it, right? But I'm confident as an engineer that we could figure out a way to affix it to the ground to be able to resist those overturning forces.
Well, I think if it's shown on the plan, which it is, it's incumbent on us to maintain compliance with the plan too, I believe. Or you'll be telling us we're in violation. So either way, the burden's on us to make sure it looks like that and it's maintained.
Okay, that's great.
Yep.
Before I have Brian come up and go over the noise with you, which can get kind of long, again, I apologize for the delay in getting that to you, Mr. Chairman. We certainly wanted to get it sooner, but we were trying to be mindful that the way we were communicating about a science that we're not, at least I'm not really familiar with, we were doing so effectively. I did send you a couple of other documents by letter, and I just wanted to explain to you why I sent them. The first one was a copy of the motor carrier noise emission standards, the federal ones, and I don't know if the board is familiar with these. I surely wasn't, but I'm more so now, as well as a listing of decibel levels for interstate motor carriers, which all these trailers qualify as. The point in sending those was that these vehicles are inspected by the federal government and they cannot go above 86 decibels or they don't get their inspection sticker. Now, that in and of itself, though, becomes the threshold beyond which they're in violation. And because they're allowed to be 86 decibels, that any kind of restriction that tries to make them quieter cannot restrict their noise. When there was some monitoring of vehicles along Westville Road, there was an occasional louder vehicle, and that was why I included it, because I'm guessing, don't have a fact on this, it could very well be one of those tractor trailers that go in between states that only have to meet the 86 decibels, which is quite a bit higher than the limits in the noise ordinance. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I also was really surprised to find all the cases on the New Hampshire Motor Transport Association case. I never knew anything about it, but you're up in lights on all the computer screens. That was a nuisance zoning ordinance, and that's distinguishable from your more formal noise ordinance that you have now. Basically, what it said is you can have a noise that disturbs people's quiet enjoyment, something that people will say generally under a nuisance provision. That's what was his issue there, not the noise ordinance you have now. So those were all instructive for me to know that under federal law, the trucks, if you will, they have to meet the federal standard and they don't have to meet any other local standards. Not that, but we're still doing our very best to keep the noise down. I just thought that was something that was relevant when we start to look at some of the noise requirements that Brian measured when he was at the site. So with that, if it's okay with you, I'll have Brian go over the noise study and what we found.
Sure.
I believe you have the report.
Yes, although at 130-some pages,
163.
sorry, 163 pages, I didn't print, I don't have a printout with me.
I do have one printout copy available,
We may need
but
it,
it did
yeah.
get emailed to
So
everybody.
one comment on the federal regs.
Yes.
I believe they only apply on federal and state highways, and Westville Road is not a state highway
But I think it's as to the trucks.
on federal and state highways.
No, it applies to the trucks generally, and that doesn't mean that the trucks that travel interstate commerce, delivering and picking up goods, they don't leave them on the edge of the federal highway. They deliver them into the towns, and they don't turn their motors down, although they do travel at a lower rate. It says right in what I gave you that a local ordinance cannot preempt the settings that are set by the federal government, and it said that in the case also.
Okay,
But we are below that. I'm just giving you a broader view. We're talking about interstate commerce.
Dee, would you pass that noise report down?
You're on.
On that study that you're talking about, they're listing what they're calling soft sites and hard sites. Any idea what that is?
Which study is that?
The federal study, the maximum permissible sound level readings. They're talking about stationary sites and highway operation. And they're saying a soft site and a hard site. I was just wondering if there was any definition of what that is.
I have, and I tried to not give you the voluminous pages that go with these. All I did was pull down the decibel levels for the trucks themselves. just to give you an idea of what
Right.
those were, not that we're at those levels. Okay. You're on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Brian Rempert with RPF Environmental. Now, do you just, I know this report's long. The one appendix has all the raw data in it. So if you guys wanted to review the data that we actually collected on site, this is, the whole appendix is filled with data that was downloaded from the actual dosimeters that we used.
So can I ask
Yeah.
a stupid question in the beginning?
Sure.
So as I look at all of this data, if everything is called a session report, where on a session report does it say what location, location 1 through 6, that data was taken?
Look at one here. It doesn't explicitly state which station each one is at. What I would have to do is go back to the date and the time that it was collected.
So we
And then
don't. So we don't know. From
I,
this.
I would know, but I'd have to go back. But right now, looking at this, I don't think you wouldn't be able to tell just from looking at it,
And
the way it's written.
a second follow-on question here is that, I may understand how decibels work versus, linear measures, but I certainly don't know. I think I can speak for the whole board here. I don't know all of your acronyms and terms. Okay, like I'm seeing L-peak, LPK, I assume that's the level that's peak, highest.
Correct.
On the one I happen to be on right now, 96.2 dB. I can't call out the page because you didn't put page numbers. Okay, so I'm seeing numbers into the 90s for peaks, not averages. So I'm having difficulty understanding how, if you can't exceed 86 decibels, how a 96.2 decibel peak is okay. That's 10 dB higher. That's 8 times more sound energy, more than 8 times.
I would have to look back at the data that we collected and see if that was a measurement that was collected when we did the monitoring on the backup alarms.
Are your session reports in date order?
They should be.
This is from one taken on 9/26 with a start time of 12:12 p.m. and stop time of 12:14.
Yeah, they should all be in order.
And I just randomly picked this.
Yeah, I
So-
know. They should all be in order, at least. This. Yeah, they shouldn't. What I'm looking at right now is they're kind of out of order, but all the locations are here. This is all the data that was downloaded from the 2 days from that we did the monitoring. So
But we don't know where they were taken.
I can figure that out and mark them back up. But yeah,
Weren't specific locations where they were shown on your plan.
that's what I'm saying.
Yes. So
Does anybody else want to take a look at this?
What we can do is instead of saying.
I'm done with it.
We can put the actual station 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
but would they have
Thumb
had to
through
have
it.
This is what
been
was in
along?
the email.
Yeah, that's the email.
They would either be
Thumb through it on my
station 1,
computer.
2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah, but those are 6 different locations. I
Yes.
was trying to see which data goes to what location.
Yeah.
I think that's a logical
Yep,
thing.
Yep.
Right?
we can find that out.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. The report does summarize the data, so that way, we just included the raw data in here just so you would have it to refer to, but I understand what you're saying as far as the,
And if something's listed as having an LPL, capital L, small p, small k, which I interpret as being level peak of 96 point something, is that not above 86?
it is above 86.
Okay.
But that could have been monitored when we did the backup alarms. I'd have to go back and find out and give you the exact location and stuff like that for it.
Okay.
So, So this report that you're looking at is from the monitoring that we did over the 2 days. What we did is we wrote the noise report such that it's not just a bunch of tables that, saying table 1 through 4, table 1 through 6, like we had before with the first report. I wrote it comparing the different noise limits in the ordinance with the noise readings that we got, just so we can compare the noise readings with that specific noise limit in the ordinance, trying to make it easier to understand and easier to explain which limits we were comparing it to and what the noise results were. So the the limits that we compared to that we thought were most relevant to the operations on the property was noise limit 1 through 6. So what I'm going to go through is each noise limit and then the results that we had and whether or not we think we exceeded it or not. Okay. Start with noise limit 1. Noise limit 1 talks about the presence of that amount of acoustic energy for that amount of time necessary to cause one or more of the following effects. So there's two different effects. One of them is temporary or permanent hearing loss, and the other one would be, are the noises considered a nuisance or do they interfere with the comfortable and reasonable enjoyment of life and property?
So I think we can go beyond what's going to make you deaf. That's not in question here. It's what the noise limits are, okay, that you have to maintain. The fact that you go deaf at 102 decibels is not relevant to this conversation.
But isn't it relevant to the noise limit?
No, because all the noise limits are well below that. It's down in the 80s. You're telling me.
Okay, but should I continue?
Well, carry on.
No, I'm just.
It's whatever you need to. I'm just saying. I think this is a waste of time right now. But if you want to carry on, please feel free.
Well, I don't want to waste everybody's time here, but
I think what
Maybe
he's
you
trying.
need to rephrase that.
I think what he's trying to do is follow your ordinance, Mr. Chairman. There were different noise levels listed. Each one was described somewhat differently. And we asked him to address every one of them to the extent that they applied. I think there was 1 or 2 that didn't apply, Brian.
Yeah.
So the first one was noise limit 1. I think for the people who are present, he was trying to describe what that was. So what were your results, Brian?
Well, the results for noise limit 1, should I read through this and explain what we were looking at?
Yes.
Or should I just say the results?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. To address a temporary or permanent hearing loss, obviously, the noise limits, just to give some idea of, I mean, obviously you understand noise and wavelengths and things.
I've been to a rock concert.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk in a second here. Any sound below 70 decibels is considered something that somebody can be around forever and typically not have any hearing loss whatsoever. 85 decibels and above is when you start seeing hearing loss. Occupational limits for hearing loss are 85 and 90 decibels, something we want to stay away from. 120 decibels and above, now I'm getting into rock concert levels, couldn't cause immediate hearing loss. 140, 150, permanent hearing loss, and so on and so on. The noises that we measured at the different stations, 1 through 6, normal truck traffic activity, so backing with alarms activated, coupling, uncoupling, driving around the lot. We measured those at the stations around the perimeter of the lot and at the property lines of the receptors across the street, Westville Street or Avenue. And they range from about 59 decibels to 65.2. The impulse noises, which are considered the backup alarms, coupling, uncoupling, and then air release from the trailer brakes, we measured those again at the same 6 locations, and we had noises that were at 57.8 and 60 to 65.6. So that was the range at those locations. The high noise areas, the air release from the brakes, again, measured them at those areas, and we received noises of 72 to 82 decibels. But when you calculate those at the actual receptor dwellings, so the properties, because we didn't measure anything on the properties because I didn't want to trespass or anything like that. So when we calculate it using the inverse square law to the actual dwellings, those noises drop to about between 35.9 to 40.4. So to address that part of the noise ordinance, whether or not it's going to be a permanent or temporary hearing loss, I would say the answer would be no, based on the noise readings we've gotten, and we know they're below 85 decibels, which causes hearing loss. So those noises should not cause any permanent or temporary hearing loss. To address, are the noises considered a nuisance, or do they interfere with comfort and enjoyment of life and property? Again, for reference, normal conversation is between 60 to 70 decibels. You raise your voice, now you're getting to 65, 75 decibels. Shouting is about 85 decibels. So based on those same readings that we had, the noises we generate are usually right around normal conversation or less. So I wouldn't consider those to be a nuisance because it's around normal conversation or less. So it should not cause a nuisance, at least in our measurements and in our opinion. Noise limit 2, that talks about continuous sound levels. Noise limit 2 states that no person shall cause the continuous sound level to exceed the following limit: daytime 65, nighttime 55. Continuous noise is defined in the ordinance as where the offending source of noise is nearly constant over a 1 hour period. A measurement sampling period of less than 1 hour, but no less than 5 minutes is permitted. The noises that are generated from that property would not constitute continuous noise because they're not at that duration to be considered continuous. So we don't believe that noise limit 2 would apply to this particular study. Noise limit 3 is impulse noises. That does apply to us because we got backup alarms, coupling, uncoupling, and air brakes and things like that. We know that the daytime limits are 77 decibels, nighttime is 67 decibels. When we measure the impulse from the backup alarms, coupling, uncoupling, we saw it at the 6 locations around the perimeter there, 57.8 to 65.6. And again, with the high noise, we were at the receptor dwellings, we were at about 35.9 to 40.4. So all impulse noises are below the daytime and the nighttime impulse noise limits. So we believe that those would also be below those as well based on the monitoring. Noise limit 4 talks about background reference level, and that says no person shall cause the background noise level to increase by more than 10 decibels in any receptor area at any time of day. So what we had to do first is we had to determine what's background noise. So we measured the background noise with no activity on the parking lot whatsoever, and to figure out what's traffic noise, what's normal noise around the area. So with the background noises ranged from 56.4 to 67.2. So if we look at the noise ordinance, then in order to be out of compliance, we'd have to be 10 decibels above that background level. So we'd have to be at 66.4 to 77.2 decibels. So normal truck activity was again 58.9 to 65.2 with the noises involved. So based on that measurement, we were below 66.4 to 77.2. By a few decibels on either way. So we believe we wouldn't be in violation of noise limit 4 as well with normal truck activity and operation. Noise limit 5 talks about pure tone conditions. We don't believe this applies to us as well because a pure tone condition is more audiometric testing and acoustical, like you're calibrating a piano and stuff like that. So that's
Tuning fork.
Tuning fork, that's the word I was thinking. So the noises we have aren't pure tone conditions, are more complex noises, so that one shouldn't apply as well. Noise limit 6 area. A high noise area is an area where the ambient sound level is already as high or higher than 3 decibels below the sound level limits of noise limit 2. And then it says no person shall cause the noise level in any area to increase by more than 3 decibels. Noise limit 2 states that states the continuous sound levels, which we don't generate continuous sound levels, so we don't believe that portion applies to us. So we looked at the other portion that applied to, did we increase more than 3 decibels? So the background noise was 56.4 to 67.2, and we measured 58.9 to 65.2. So that's less than 3 decibel change to the background. So we believe we would also be below that limit as well because we're not generating high noise for continuous periods of time.
Would you say those limits again and what your measurements were? Actually, let me grab a pen first. Okay.
For the continuous noise or the background and the noises that we measured?
The last one you did, which was, I think.
The background noises we measured were between 56.4 and 67.2.
Yeah.
The noises and then the noise that we created increased it to 58.9. to 65.2. So we're just under 3 decibels. Yeah, it's close.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I had to do the math to make sure that it was before I said that. So it is close. So based on those results, we're under that 3 decibel difference as well.
And you had locations on those too.
Yeah.
Normal track.
The acoustical fence, the fabric that's in there, there's a spec sheet that's in the actual report here, so you can see the spec sheet about it. It is wind rated, but I know what you're saying as far as the fence itself. The material is wind rated. I think it's to like 100 miles an hour or something like that before it'll actually cause it to damage to the fabric. But the acoustic fence, the way it's designed, should drop the noise levels down at the property line where it's going to be put along Westville. It says it's rated at 25 decibels for the alarm, the backup alarms and noises like that. So we know, I think in the last meeting we were here, I think you had an ordinance about fence height, 6 feet or 8 feet. So if it's 6 feet, the backup alarms, they should be installed at the rear of the tractor on the frame. So they're no more than 3 feet high off the ground. So the noise coming off that most of it should be captured by the acoustic fence. Some of it may go over it, but the 25 decibels is like a lab number. It's a factory number. In real world, we're thinking maybe it'll knock it down 10 to 15 decibels to be realistic about it, which would still knock down all these numbers to the point where they're still going to be below the ordinance levels as we feel. Then in addition to that, I know it was mentioned before that there's 29 parking spaces along Westville Road. So you also have another barrier of the trailers backed in there. And as you're backing in and out, you're still going to have that barrier plus the fence, plus the distance back to the receptors and the dwellings across the street. So we feel that that's also going to add to the dampening of the noise as well. Okay, so.
Any questions?
I'm still unclear why I'm seeing numbers in the 90s in your data for LPK.
Unless, I probably don't know what I'm looking at, but there are some numbers that are over 100.
Yeah.
for that.
I was trying to be moderate, but yeah, there were, I think there were, when I went through them, there were a few that were over 100.
Yeah, I would have to find out where those were collected at and what date and time. Was it a backup alarm? Because the backup alarms are rated at 102 decibels to see which noise sheet that is, what noise we were measuring.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Would you like us to?
So backup alarms are measuring at 102,
from the manufacturer,
but you have impulse alarms down at 65.6.
that's at the distance away from the source. Yeah. We did, in the first report, we did measure them at the source, and they were actually rated less than 102 decibels. They were 90s, low to mid 90s, I believe, when we measured them and the actual tractor themselves and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to point out too is we did the impulse noise monitoring we did for noise limit 3. The readings we got were 57.8 to 65.6. In the first report, where we just calculated them based on the noise from the backup alarms using the inverse square law, we got noise measurements that range from 55.9 to 61.2. So the noise limits were pretty similar between real world versus calculated. They're a little bit higher here, and I think that's just because of the road traffic and things like that that added to the noise.
Okay.
So the noise limits were pretty similar to what we extrapolated or calculated here versus real world, what we measured. So.
Would you like us to get back to you with those
I don't want
clarifications?
to. I don't want to drag this on
I know.
unless other people on the board.
I don't think we need the locations.
Okay.
I think the numbers speak for themselves.
Okay. We're good.
That's
Okay.
my one opinion.
Although, in the future, page numbers are good and explaining and actually saying what things mean.
Agree 100%.
Okay.
With the data.
I think too, Mr. Chairman, this is the first municipal board that Brian's come to to deliver a noise report, so it's a little learning curve there also.
You picked a tough one.
I did, yeah.
Well, half of us came from engineering.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're used to that kind of thing.
No,
Yes.
these are really good comments, and I promise you, next time if I'm in front of you, this will be
Dynamite.
organized differently.
Never happened.
You could have left that unsaid, Dee. We get no respect from her.
So seeing that your sound barrier, visual barrier fence is going to drop us down 10, 15 points, that's wonderful. But you're also creating a kite. And that's the only thing that's the biggest concern is you guys finding a way to make sure that those are solid
Well-
and on the ground, just not floating.
Right.
Because heaven forbid,
Yeah.
wind comes by, that fence goes in through a windshield of an oncoming car or anything like that. I'm not looking to put any problems on your plate. I'm just saying that you're adding a kite to a piece of metal. And
Good point.
You're right on a public sidewalk.
and you're right there. So if you can find a good way to structurally make sure that that stuff is going to stay, then
It's a must.
I'm
We absolutely will.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yes.
absolutely will. And so just to recap, the way the noise report was approached was literally like, we had a discussion about this, and it was, let's go through each individual noise limit and just quantify what that definition is, and then give you the result of that. So that was the approach that we took, and part of that's on me. But at the end of the day, right, each one of those noise limits has, we've shown through the study, has been addressed.
Right.
And we're below what the limits of the ordinance state. Just to
well,
recap.
you're actually not doing a true study.
Sorry?
You're actually not doing a true study. Because as a couple people have mentioned, you have 63 trailers out there. That's a buffer, and it's a huge buffer.
Oh, without a doubt. But
You're doing raw data on.
Worst case.
Worst case.
yeah,
Yes.
but I mean, this is the challenge with this specific use. This is a really
I understand.
challenging.
I'm just,
Yeah, without a doubt, because we had to face that with the traffic, and we also had to face that with the noise as well.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. No questions yet.
not for me.
Okay. So would you like to hear your public input, or would you like me to recap? I'd like to recap before you're done, but I don't want to do it
I would
twice.
ask you to recap. What's your pleasure? Would you like to hear the public input
love
first?
to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and if there's anybody speaking in favor of this, do we have any letters, Dee? Emails?
No letters, no.
Okay. Please come up to a microphone and state your piece. If anybody's speaking against this or just have neutral kind of questions, please, again, come on up and let's hear.
My name's Rocco Piccarelli.
Yeah.
I live at 52 Westville Road, directly across the street from the proposed entrance to this facility. My first thing I'd like to bring up is what I saw is a 6-foot fence. My property sits well above 6 feet from the park and ride or whatever it is. So is that gonna hold sound back from entering my property? My second thing is they said they were gonna only operate till midnight. They have already been operating before getting their variance or permits. So who's gonna hold them to actually not operate before midnight?
So when you say they've been operating, this is a true question. I don't
Yeah, I'm listening.
I guess I had been led to believe that they'd done some testing out there with like 5 or 6 trailers, and it was testing purposes only, not really operating, so they could do their noise measurements. Is that what you were referring to, or were they actually?
Maybe so, but I just can't picture them doing testing after the hours of midnight or even then. But I live directly across the street,
Sure.
so I think nobody would really know better than me.
Okay.
So, and then the last thing I'd like to add is, after all the sound and noise things he was talking about backup alarms. Backup alarms are meant to be heard, so why would they be quiet? And the one thing I didn't hear them mention is engine braking, because I have been woken up by that in the middle of the night. So that's probably louder than idling. Engine braking. So air brakes are loud, backup alarms are loud, idling is loud, engine braking is louder than all of those. And
Sadly, I live on Sweet Hill Road.
yeah,
As you come down.
I know where Sweet Hill, I lived there one time.
So I'm very familiar with engine braking.
Yeah, so they can do all those tests. If you're driving, it might be quiet. If you're idling, it might be quiet. But stopping and going is when tractor trailers start to make noise. So I'd like to you guys just take that into consideration. That's all I have. I'll let them go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You don't have to have one, but I'm just asking, do you want to respond to that at all? Okay, that's cool. Anyone else have any comments? Sure, come on down.
Rocco Piccarelli Jr., 52 Westville Road. You know, we talked about traffic and thing, and they're talking about noise. Have they ever had 6 or 7 diesel trucks running at a time and get the decibels coming? Are there going to be reefer units running all night on these trailers? These are questions that haven't been answered, okay? And the biggest thing should be safety. And, you know, one of the things is DEF fluid that all these newer diesels must have, okay, and use. And there's some, not a lot of, I got the data sheet, safety data sheet on it. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. They don't have the data yet, because it's a fairly new thing with these trucks. But some of the acute technological effects of it. First one they got listed as oral. Irritant to the mucous membranes, esophagus, and stomach, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, general gastrointestinal upset can be expected.
Sorry, from what again?
It's called DEF. It's diesel engine fluid.
Okay, sorry.
Or exhaust fluid, I should say.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is dermal. It can cause skin irritation, severe irritation, skin contact may aggravate existing dermatitis. Inhalation. Expected to be relatively low acute toxicity, but may be harmful if inhaled. Now, the sidewalk's on that side. That's where people walk. And this is a residential area. I know it's zoned commercial, but most of that area is being used as residential. There's the apartment buildings and everything else. Skin corrosion, irritation, repeated prolonged exposure to concentrated mercury may cause dermatitis. Serious eye damage and irritation may cause mild to severe eye irritation. Respiratory or skin sensitization. No data is available at this time. And then to know if it's a carcinogen, they don't have the data. I got a couple of these I printed out that you're welcome to take a look at. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up. Did anybody contact the road agent? We talked about the traffic and how many lights there are. This can, I mean, they can only go left on 125 because they can't make the turn. They're going to impede on oncoming traffic. Again, it's all safety. This isn't the right place for this. And, you know, along with the diesel fumes and all the other hazardous things that go along with trucking, and I pretty much know about trucking as I was the supervisor for the Verizon. All the vehicles in Verizon were my responsibility at one time for motor vehicles. So I'm pretty much know what I'm talking about. Trucks leak diesel fuel, engine oil, antifreeze. There's a lot of these things. You know, we've had enough problems with the water situation and everything else in this area. And I hope this is being taken very serious because it's not the right place for this type of operation. And I also know of places, and I have some pictures if anybody's interested, where they're not trucking area. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, they widen the roads. All the businesses have places to pull off to get into the businesses. What's going to happen here? And who's going to police all these? You know, they can go promise us the world. They'll be been here for variation after variation after variation. Once they get their foot in the door, where is it going to end? I thank you for your time. If anybody wants to take a look at these data sheets, they're welcome. Want me to leave them somewhere?
Yeah, we'll take the SDS safety data sheet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
We have another. Oh, before you start, does anybody want to take a look at those safety data sheets?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Oh, I got 'em.
Sorry. I'll give you one, I'll keep the other.
Okay.
Jim, if either you or Michael want to take a look at these, feel free. Because they're the same thing. I'm sorry?
Page 5 is
Thank you. Ma'am,
Thank you. Would you like me to wait for review time or just launch?
what do you guys, let's launch.
Okay, all right. I know it's getting late. My name is Amy.
This isn't late.
Starting to. Amy Manzelli from BCM Law, here representing Gary Denson, who owns many of the residential units across the street from this property. I apologize for the lateness of our letter. I understand what the applicant's situation is, working with consultants and getting everything just right, but I wanted to make sure that our comments included a review of those application materials that just came in earlier this week. And thank you to Ms. Voss, who did print copies before the meeting for me. I brought hard copies today just in case. So we are here again to urge the board to deny this application. And I would specifically urge the board to deny this application tonight. It's been 3 meetings, a lot of information, yet the variance criteria are not satisfied. So I'm not going to go over my whole letter, but I do want to go over some highlights here real quick. I just want to say out loud, the board has no obligation to approve this application. That is not a zoning board's job, to just approve all applications. Some are approvable, some are not. And it's your job to, separate the wheat from the chaff and figure out what is what. And we would submit this is not approvable. And you have no obligation to approve this. With all of the impacts, traffic, noise, emissions, property values, I seriously question this board. Why would you put those impacts on your citizens when there's no obligation to approve this use? Couple other points. I did make a note. I wanted to thank the board. Impressed with the specificity and the detail of the board's questions tonight, and it is very reassuring that the board is taking this seriously, as one of the other commenters said, and we appreciate the board's attention to this application. One of the pervasive problems with the application and the applicant's approach is that the applicant is ignoring the residential nature of this area. It is not exclusively residential, right? I mean, that would be a ridiculous statement to make. But there are 85 residential units in the vicinity of this project. That number is contained in the Stanhope appraisal that we submitted, and that number is uncontested. The applicant has not challenged the existence, that fact, that there are 85 residential units around this area. The applicant focuses on the fact that there are commercial uses in the area, and that is indisputable. There are, but that doesn't turn this doesn't eliminate the majority residential nature of this area. And that, of course, factors into all of the variance criteria. I wanted to emphasize in response to the applicant's note, I believe it was 22, on the plan, because it really illustrates the applicant's approach here. The applicant needs flexibility, but that flexibility goes against the variance standards. And what I mean here is that language on the plan should be a huge red flag for this board. An average of 14 trips per day. We all know how averages work. You know, it could be no trips for 5 days. I haven't done the math out here. No trips for 5 days, and 100 trips the next day. That's what an average of 14 means. And that is contrary to what the applicant has been representing so far. Now, I understand why they're doing that. They need flexibility, and it's because their plan is largely unenforceable. They know they can't enforce the limits that they've said. They're not going to have someone with a little ticker tape saying, okay, only 1 to 2 per hour. And that should be these kind of average type approaches should be a big red flag because it impacts all of the impacts we're talking about: the noise, the emissions, the decrease in property value. And speaking of noise, your noise ordinance applies. And that is a really important point. And I addressed this in my letter in detail, but I just want to highlight that Plastow case.
Which page?
Oh, I'm on page 4, page numbers, page 4. Up at the top, it has a quote from that Plastow case that went up to the New Hampshire Supreme Court, perhaps before your time, perhaps some of you were involved. And it does talk about preemption, but it focuses on this language from the federal law that says primary responsibility for control of noise rests with state and local government. So that's a quote from that decision, and you are the local government that sentence is referring to. And in that case, the Supreme Court decided that the Plastow's limitations on a trucking terminal were fine. So they didn't find preemption. Your noise ordinance applies. And I want to say a couple things about your noise ordinance because we feel very strongly that the RPF analysis data methodology is unreliable. And I've gone into great detail in my letter, but I do want to hit a couple high points. And this one, I realized this evening, and it's not contained in my letter. So when you look at your level 1 noise limit, there's about a bullet list of about 5 different ways that a noise could violate that. And one is nuisance, and one is interference with comfortable and reasonable enjoyment of your life, of your property, etc. And when you read your noise ordinance, there are no numerical limits that apply to those 2 standards. None. It is an analysis of relativity. What is the experience now versus what will the future experience be? When you move on to the numerical limits, those only apply at the source. So all this business of then we extrapolated out and we figured out what the noise was going to be way over there, that is not how your noise ordinance is written. Your noise ordinance is written to set limits on noise at the source of the noise. And I talked about other flaws in the analysis. For example, they didn't include the air brakes when analyzing all of the noise limits. And if you include the air brake data, it violates limit 4. And that's assuming their ambient levels are accurate, which I don't think they are because of the way that they collected the data. Also, with respect to the noise ordinance, this proposed concession of we won't operate from midnight to 5 a.m., that doesn't correlate at all to your noise ordinance, which sets nighttime limits from 7 to 7. They're looking for flexibility, but it just doesn't fit with the laws. And the fit, of course, and I put this in, if you look on the very bottom of page 4, but all through page 5, 6, and some of page 7, I have provided proposed findings on each of the variance criteria that would very defensively support a denial. Now, I understand you don't make motions to deny, you make motions to approve that don't pass, but that's what I'm asking for. And these findings will support that. I know that you had a chance to look at this letter beforehand, so I'm not going to belabor anything else beyond that, except to say that in the interest of time and efficiency, the flaws with this application, the sound of a truck, they're not going to get quieter. The decrease in property values, it is what it is. And our appraiser's report from Stanhope is the most comprehensive property value analysis you have on record in this. Those facts are not going to change, no matter what modifications are made to the plan. So for that, it's sensible to deny the application tonight. We welcome any questions.
Folks? I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for spending so much time on this.
Thank you.
Folks?
So first and foremost, we have no appraisal from Stanhope. We've never been given one. Do you?
It was in the materials that I sent over to you. It was like 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, for the first meeting.
I have 2 Realtor opinions.
That, one of them is Stanhope.
Is that,
Was that,
That's what you're referring to.
No, I'm referring to an appraisal report done by Stanhope Group, which is attached to our September letter.
Right.
That was our second meeting.
Well, second.
Separate from that, there are 2 Realtor letters.
I,
The Realtor letters are a little bit of a wash because both sides put them in.
I had 1 letter from Attorney Manzelli, and I do not have the second letter. I have the one from today and the first night, and I have no
I don't have a
appraisal.
full set of paperwork.
I know.
I'm trying to send everything to
I know
everyone
you
along the
did.
way.
It's a lot. You were here and you didn't have it. either, did you, Jim?
No.
Nope.
This is the September 23rd letter. Is it the Exhibit C?
Yes.
The September 23rd packet.
I only have the first one with the 2 Realtor letters.
You're welcome to take this one. I know
So
that
this,
you were looking for it in advance, but I apologize if I didn't.
that's indeed, yeah, there's a lot of paper here. So the question would become whether that's important enough for us to not continue, but I can certainly recap
Okay.
and go through the criteria and where we feel we've met the criteria. Beginning with the not contrary to the public interest, because it is the 3rd meeting, I'm just going to do my best to
Yeah.
pull it together,
Okay.
with the exception of those items. So, not contrary to the public interest and consistent with the spirit of the ordinance are usually reviewed together. And in the interest of time, that's how I'm going to approach this. Under Chester Rod and Gun v. Town of Chester, a use has to unduly, in a marked degree, threaten the public safety or change the character of the area. How 10 to 14 trucks. And yes, that is enforceable. It's a note on the plan. If we don't do that, we're in violation, and we understand that. But how to 10 to 12 trucks per day are a problem in the C1 zone, where there is almost 5,000 vehicles a day going up and down Westville Road. I guess that is where I say it's not contrary to the public interest. I would also say that if you look at your zoning ordinance, and I'm going to read this out of the C1, its objectives and characteristics, today's reliance on automobile transportation, and Plastow being the commercial center for an area beyond its boundaries. And you think about what those words mean, especially in this particular location where it is near the interstate and Route 125. Provisions need to be made within the town for areas to serve as regional commercial centers. Isn't that why this area was zoned C1? I would think that it was, simply because that's what your ordinance said, and that's what the legislative body voted for. These areas should have good highway access, adequate off-street parking, proper lighting, police and fire protection, and adequate water and sewer. We don't need the water and sewer necessarily, but we have all of that here. That was why this area was zoned C1. And this particular site is within 600 feet of Route 125. The town engineer has reviewed this proposal. He found no issues. The fire chief, we should have an email in the file from him. He has no objections. The police department likewise has also communicated and sent an email. He is not opposed to this project. This area was zoned C1 for the reasons I've explained. At that time, there were residential properties here and residential uses. But when a rezoning like that happens, it's intended to see the area change how the legislative body sees it as it's viewed in your master plan. And indeed, in your master plan, it talks about this area. That was why the state had this particular property as a park and ride, because of its location in proximity to the travel routes. There are a variety of mixed uses. Yes, there are residential, but they predate the ordinance. They are all non-conforming. They could not be rebuilt unless they were rebuilt exactly in kind. And the intention of the townspeople was for this area to serve commerce. We have a manufacturing facility, a tire shop, an auto body shop, industrial condos, a professional office, 3 apartment complexes, which are quasi-businesses, and 4 single-family homes.
I'm sorry, they're what?
They're like quasi-businesses. While they serve as a residence for the occupants, they're a business for the owner. They make... Well, I have those complexes in the general area. Was in one of the reports. Maybe not. Maybe that's inaccurate. Well, in an apartment building is a quasi-business. The landlord makes money by renting units.
So people who live there should
No.
not expect the same
No.
as
No.
any other townsperson?
I didn't say that, but these particular residential uses, they are in a C1 zone. And the goal when you rezone in the law of nonconforming uses is for them eventually to move in other directions to more into areas where they fit in accordance with the master plan. Not that they have to do it right away because they're grandfathered, but that's the goal when an area rezoned, is to see it change over time into the vision viewed by the planning board. That's generally how it works. But the area nonetheless is mixed. And because we do have people that call this area their home, we've gone above and beyond and done everything within our power to try to be sensitive to that by implementing every tool we have to make sure we maintain quiet. There is also a controlled travel route with this particular project. It enters and exits the 10 to 14 trucks through designated driveways, and it does not go downtown. None of the traffic goes in that direction. There will be no new construction, no excavation. That is one benefit of using the property as it exists. The use will create less traffic, and while I understand that the park and ride was underutilized, this particular site will not have 270 spaces. The park and ride may have been underutilized, but could have produced an awful lot more traffic than it did. It also, this particular use produces less traffic than almost every use that is a permitted use in the C1 zone. What our hurdle here is it's been vacant for so long, and I think it's become the norm. So for all those reasons, we don't feel 10 to 14 trucks per day, and as you said, Mr. Chairman, it's on the plan and it's enforceable, is overly intense or contrary to the public interest or inconsistent with the spirit of the ordinance, because it does serve a purpose as a commercial area, totally consistent with the spirit and intent of the C1 zone. Now, as to substantial justice, any loss to the landowner must be outweighed by a public gain. And I guess I'm not sure what the public gain would be denying this particular application, because it actually prevents a more intense use that would be adding to the 5,000 cars a day going down Westville Road. But more importantly, it is very similar to a case that I was reading today. It's called Lebrecht v. Town of Salem. And in that case, a developer bought 2 lots that were residential. They were located in the commercial area where the commercial uses were on one side and residential was on the other. He went to the zoning board for a variance, and this went to court, and the zoning board found that the changes to the area were consistent with the use he was proposing, and he was right on the line, because the master plan wanted to see a downtown center in Salem. As you can see, this is a pretty old case. Salem's pretty busy. And that having the particular property used for commercial uses was going to have a positive effect on the community, because that was the overall goal of the zoning. And the area had already undergone a change. What this whole idea, though, is consistent with the fact that this whole area is Zone C1. So this may take a very long time, but 100 years from now, it will probably all be commercial. Who knows? As to the diminution of use, as I mentioned, I only have the letters I did not get the Stanhope, but I did go through these letters. The Beach Homes letter talked about it could have an impact, never said it would have an impact. It could deter buyers who prioritize quiet and peaceful living. I'm not sure 5,000 cars going by your property every day is quiet and peaceful living. It most likely is the area itself and how it's changed. I believe you said, Mr. Chairman, that you use that road often as a cut through, as
I
do
do.
many other people. And the more vehicles there are, the more noise and the more traffic. And there was no evidence about the property or the subject property or the residential properties discussed at all in that particular letter. The second one, it says here, desirability to live on Westville Road, it would shrink the pool of potential buyers for your property, for residential use, for commercial use. Adverse health effects to area residents, potentially. No evidence to support any of that. Environmental impacts, there's no evidence at all to support that. And I would argue that 10 to 14 trucks going in and out each day, or 61 trailers parked there, is not going to have much of an environmental impact. They're going to drive in and they're going to drive out. Impacts on infrastructure. If it's not the 10 to 14 trucks, it may be 1,000 vehicles a day with a drive-through bank and a retail center. There were other questions raised by this particular individual about, will the drivers be resting at the facility? No, they won't. Sanitary facilities, there will be a porta potty for the security guard. Safety and security for the property and the people. Yes, we have a fence and we have a guard. The types of goods and materials that will be transported to and from the site, they will be the consumer goods that Amazon delivers to all our homes. The operating hours, they're not 24/7 anymore. They are 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. The noise barrier, we've touched on that this evening. Aesthetic and landscaping, that's a planning board matter, and we will discuss it with them if we are fortunate enough to proceed to that. Fueling and mechanic activities, none. Light pollution, the lights are the same as they have been when it was a park and ride. Could approval of this be used as a precedent? Well, how many pieces of property do you know that have 1/3 wetland and 2/3 a paved parking lot? I'm not thinking that it will be a precedent for anybody. To the contrary, we submitted a letter from Mr. Goodnow. He has a master's in real estate from MIT and a BA in economics. He talked about the incrementally greater negative impact on the permitted uses versus the proposed use. The proposed use would generate substantial less total trips per day. The environmental impacts, he said, would remain the same. But again, we avoid the dirty construction and God knows how long that would take for another commercial use. He said there was very little evidence to support a negative impact and that the values in the area were very similar and didn't see any impact on values at all. Now, Mr. Riley he has 40 years experience. He had a lot of data and a lot of facts in his letter. He knows the area. He's done over 100 appraisals in the town of Plastow. He knows this property and he's appraised it in the past. He described the property's location in great detail as a mixed-use area, which is in the C1, in a very good location for proximity to the highway. He talked about the commercial uses, retail stores, commercial services, banks, restaurants, professional offices. But residential uses are not allowed in C1 anymore. He talked about 0.42 to 0.53 trips per hour. And he said that there was no data, no evidence at all to support a 30% impact on property values due to this proposed use. And that it would be a very expensive study to generate a broad enough analysis to be able to prove anything. So for that reason, we don't feel this will have any impact on the use. It's well screened. There's a noise barrier. It will be maintained. You have local owners, not out-of-state owners, who will monitor it and make sure everything is in place. And I have a hard time understanding why that would diminish the area. Maybe I'm missing something. As to the hardship, and this is always the most difficult one, and there are two tests to be had for this. I looked at the table of proposed uses that you permit in the C1 zone. There's 2 or 3 of them: vehicle, trailer, recreational vehicle sales, and service repair facility. That's permitted. It's different vehicles. They're parked on the pavement. They go in and out of the site, probably much more frequently than 10 to 14 trips per day. You also have storage of equipment vehicles used to service product. I'm not sure what that is, but they sound big. That would surely be a similar type storage situation on the site. The multimodal park and ride is 840 trips a day according to the traffic study, but we know it was underutilized. But it basically was parking of vehicles, all types of vehicles, including trucks, on public property. Here we're asking to park 61 trucks on private property with no change to the site. You have hospital and urgent care. Now, wouldn't the sirens be noisier? You've got theaters. That's a big parking lot. Other broader, small industry essential services are non-specific, but we've got drive-through restaurants and drive-through banks. Jim talked about that traffic study, as well as retail business and wholesale business, business offices, professional offices. All of those produce more traffic. But there's another provision that we've kind of overlooked. Your ordinance has an Article 3. Article 3 is the general provisions of your ordinance. And not a lot of ordinances have these, but these apply in all zoning districts. It talks about particular uses like septic systems, how many buildings per lot, things that apply throughout. We have storage containers here, section 220:17.3. So storage containers without an axle, I guess, are those boxes. And they have to meet setbacks. You go down a little further and it talks about where they're allowed. And you go to the last one, letter D. Trailers and containers with an axle are prohibited on a residential lot. That, to me, is a tractor trailer. And please correct me if I'm misreading these. Trailers and containers with an axle are allowable on commercial industrial use properties with a site plan approval from the planning board. That was one of the provisions that we all looked at early on before we came down this journey to think that this use was permitted. And I think it is. They're parked there. We did try to go for site plan approval until it was determined we needed to come to see you first. I would argue that's a permitted use. Even though it's not listed under C1, it's in the Article 3 general, and it says it's permitted. So I look at that, and there are many other uses in your regulations that we're very, very close to when you look at them, and there's not a lot of difference or different impact to the surrounding area. So this proposal includes a parking lot with those trailers that are permitted parked there, but they do have to drive in and out. It is a large C1 property with 3+ acres. Close location to the highways, as I've said, without beating a dead horse here, but it backs up to a railroad, and a third of it is very wet. One important distinction to remember is when you look at hardship and you're looking at a property that is already partially developed, a consideration is not just the land, but it's also the existing improvements. In Harborside Associates, the parade in Portsmouth, this was about a sign variance. And Portsmouth's sign variance requires very small signs, but Harborside is a big, big motel. So they applied for a variance to the zoning board in Portsmouth, and it was granted, but there was a whole bunch of litigation, and as it turned out, the Supreme Court said, that building is so large you need a bigger sign. It was warranted. So the building was considered as part of the property with the hardship. Here we have a parcel of land with pavement on it, great pavement built by the state. It's all ready to go. It's got the 2 driveway accesses. We just need to do some add-ons to meet the regulations. In Farrar v. Keene, we had a gentleman, an older gentleman, who owned one of the bigger, older houses you find in downtown. That house had 19 rooms, and they passed a mixed-use office zone where you had to do some sort of configuration inside that you had to either have all residential or all office. He was there alone with his wife, and he went to the zoning board and he said, I have 19 rooms in my house. I can't afford the taxes anymore. I want to rent out the offices, make a couple of apartments, and live in part of the home with my wife. They granted it because of the building being what the building was. So when you do consider the hardship, it's important to remember the other improvements that have been made to the site. Here we have the property we have. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We have an old multimodal park and ride. It's in great shape. We just want to give it a little bit of improvement like Jim's got on his plan. We want to park trucks there, the truck trailers, 10 to 12 vehicles going in and out each day. It's an optimum location. It fits squarely within the spirit and intent of your regulations. It will add very little traffic. And arguably, when those trailers are sitting there, they're a permitted use because of the general provisions in your ordinance. So we do feel that this use is more than appropriate. As to the regulation that is strictly applied, because these are the special conditions that prevent the reasonable use, the only thing that I can point to is this particular use that we're proposing, which is really unique. It's not something you would likely list in a zoning ordinance as permitted, is not possible unless it's expressly listed. And that really is the regulation that I would point to say literal interpretation of the permissive use, if it's not listed, it's not permitted, imposes a real hardship here on this particular property. because this use is reasonable. It actually is a better choice than some of the more intense uses that will push those traffic trips well over 5,000 a day. And maybe the road agent wouldn't be so happy about that. But there's also a second option in the hardship test. B2 is 67433, Roman 1, small b, number 1. And it says the second option, if you don't find the hardships that the special conditions of this property create for us sufficient, if the criteria you don't feel is met, a hardship is deemed to exist if the special conditions of the property that are different from the surrounding properties leave this property unable to be used in strict conformance with the ordinance and an unnecessary hardship to enable its reasonable use as we've proposed. So that's all I have this evening, but I did want to ask the board if the board was satisfied with the noise report as presented in the information that was submitted in our report, or whether you feel it would be prudent for you to have a peer review. So I wanted to put that out there if you felt that was necessary, that what had been delivered to you so far is not, because we're in uncharted territory too, trying to figure out how to present this to you.
Folks,
Thank you.
Are we good to go, or do you want
I
to?
have a question or two.
Well, I know, are we good to go on the
The
On
noise
report.
ordinance.
on the
Okay.
report?
Yes, I'm good with the report.
Okay,
Okay.
folks? Okay, that's what I'm, see heads nodding, one way or the other. Okay, I think we're good. But
Okay.
Thank you again for that.
Oh, I did have one other thing for you.
As long as it's not a subpoena.
It's not.
Why?
Sorry.
No. Okay. So, as to the federal regulations, I'm just going to put this out there that I disagree. It says right in 4917 here, section C, subject to paragraph 2, the federal regulations control the decibel levels on those big trucks, period. Unless, number 2, you meet with the Secretary of Transportation and get relief from them. It says, in the case with Plastow, one of the 3, no state or town may set a different decibel level for a motor carrier operating within this jurisdiction. Now, that is strictly interstate commerce. So for that reason, that's kind of the top level. And unfortunately, we're stuck with the federal regulations. But I have nothing else to offer unless you have further questions for us.
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is on verbiage, and that is you're stating 12 to 14 trucks per average. Then in your conversation, you kept mentioning per day. Can we get that verbiage changed to per day instead of?
Do we have a note, 10 to 14 per day? Isn't that on the
On
plan?
an average.
Oh.
Say an average.
Oh.
Can we remove the verbiage average and utilize?
The maximum of the 12 to 14 per day, per each day, for any day.
Or no more than.
No more than 14 trucks per day.
Okay.
Yep.
That's one question.
Okay.
A second question is, I don't know who picked 5 to 12 for your operating hours, but our noise typically is 7 to 7. Understanding that 7 to 7 has some issues with a lot of traffic, and understanding that as well. First of all, you guys are going to have a hell of a time getting off of 125 with a 45-footer. But is there room to change that to 7 to 9? Because
7.
then you're working closer to the parameters of our noise level. And I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the board. These are questions that I sort of need to have in my head to sign off on something, because I believe that that 7 to 9 gives you the noise area that is allowable within the town.
Can I clarify, you're talking 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, first on the volume of traffic, right? 14 average. Now, in your mind, are you better off having no trips for 4 days and then maybe 12 of 16 trips one day, or 14 every day? So that's where the average comes in. It's like they.
And I understand, but the word average is an expandable word. And that's what I'm looking at. And I'm looking for the best interest of the town. I'm not looking for the best interest of Amazon. I'm not looking for the best interest of, not necessarily yourselves, but the corporation that's renting this place to Amazon. I personally think that that needs to be changed down to a solid number so that there is a set amount of traffic coming and going on that street.
At maximum.
At a maximum. Right.
Now, let me ask if he can, would you be willing to entertain adding a little wiggle room and say, increase the max to say 16?
I don't have a problem with that on a daily basis.
Okay.
As long as there's a set cap to it.
Okay, so
All
you
right.
want a firm number per day?
Right.
A firm
Okay.
maximum per day.
Okay.
And the hours of operation, 5 o'clock, quite honestly, and 12 o'clock, I just feel that that's intrusive to all of the, I understand you're on commercial property, but where you're adjacent to all of this other, some concessions need to happen. I would think, and I can't speak for the other 4 individuals, but if you got it down to 7 to 9, that gives you 14 hours of operation a day. With 2 trucks, you can easily handle 16 with two movers. I mean, you have stationary vehicles there. You're pulling in. It's a 15-minute swap to do a drop and swap. It's another 15 minutes to pick it up, and then you go in. You can't go right. I mean, you have to go south on 125. So, and in your benefit, 125 lights are going. The DOT will be changing those over to be scheduled so that they're on a more of a flow. So that,
Is that, okay,
Yes.
the lights, okay.
Yeah, they have a big synchronization project pending.
that will allow your trucks to move smoother through and.
I need you near a microphone, Mr. Smith.
24/7 is where you started. It isn't where we started.
No, I'm saying, so
Okay.
we conceded the hours of operation. We went back to Amazon and we said, look, we don't want any nighttime traffic. We don't exceed the noise ordinance at night, right? We proved that. So we went back to them and said, we want to give them something. We want to take the hours of operation back between midnight and 5 a.m. That took a lot of doing, but we got them to agree to that. Now,
But
I just think now you're asking for something, for what reason? To fit inside the noise ordinance, which we've already met. So I understand what you're saying and what you want to do, but at some point, we have given and given and given. We've complied with every zoning ordinance. We've done everything we can and then some. We've added a barrier, acoustic barrier fence along that residential area. I mean, we've done everything we can.
You can decide whatever you want. If you want me to sign off on it, I want less time. That's as simple as I'm going to go. I'm not saying I won't sign off on.
Okay.
I'm saying that in the spirit of keeping our town in that area to a minimal use that still meets your criteria, you're getting 14 hours worth of work out of it. You can easily swap out that many trucks. I just don't see why we have to have these people waking up because in the dead of night, when there is no other ambient sound, a backup beeper goes a lot further than you think. I've had loaders that I've plowed parking lots with, that I've had people 100 yards away try to get me to shut my backup beeper off, which the DOT and police do not allow. So that noise transcends, and it goes. And on a deadness of the night, just as you mentioned, the train makes noise too.
Yes.
I live next to the train. I know the noise. I'm just saying, I think it would be a more acceptable to the board. I don't know that they are at any level. I know me. So that's where I'm at.
If I might make another comment to piggyback onto that, that would also put this business into more similar hours to the other businesses right there. Because that lot is right next to Freedom Tire. That's an 8 to 5 business. But still,
All those businesses along there.
well, the machine shop might do odd hours.
The
and
plastic place does.
No, okay, and the kickboxing or whatever they do,
Oh,
jujitsu,
down-
they
further
might have
down.
evening, but they're done by 9.
Right.
Would you consider 6 to 11?
No, that's a sleeping time. That's the problem.
Or 6 in the morning till 11 at night.
Yes.
Go 6 to 9.
6
I
in the
was
morning.
giving you
till
7 to
11.
9.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing with the time.
I
right?
understand
When-
what
it
you're
doesn't
going to
mean we're
say,
gonna-
but you're not
we're
going to
gonna-
sway me. I am
No,
adamant.
no, just saying, 14 trips a day, could be 0, could be 10, but they're all not going to occur at 11 at night or
Well, let me tell you
11:55,
something.
so-
Also, because I've played with trucks and so forth, and when you want to go up 125, you want to do that later in the night, obviously. And Amazon is going to want to work those trucks right into the night because they're going to move faster. They're going to move more efficiently, and you're going to find trying to take that right off of 125 onto Westville, you cannot knuckle that corner when there's a car parked there. So they're definitely going to be pushing nighttime.
So
I'm just looking out for the best interest.
these
of-
guys, they don't operate like that. If you know Amazon, everything is planned and down to the T. And they're not going to move a trailer because the traffic is better. They're going to move it because they need to move it at that time. So there's no, I mean, if you say you're going to approve it tonight with those changes, we'll mark the plans up, but
I can't speak for those 4.
Okay.
But
Okay, no, I
he can certainly
appreciate
make an amendment to a motion to grant that has those times in it. And instead of just springing it on you during deliberations, just
No.
trying to have a discussion first.
I appreciate that a lot. I do. Okay. Okay. Duly noted. Thank you.
we'll do what we can, I guess.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, one other
Concerns?
question for you.
Sure.
On the trucks coming in, I understand it's going to be mostly commercial items being carried on the trailers, but the tractors themselves will be having what I consider to be hazardous waste such as diesel fuel, brake fluids, anything else that can leak out. There should be a hazardous materials plan for the site.
We have a spill prevention plan, and these are all inspected. I don't think they have any kind of liquids that wouldn't be on any other tractor trailer.
We submitted a sample emergency management plan.
Andover, North Andover.
No, they're gonna write it for this site. I've already
Yeah.
gone.
They are
through-
going to write
Yes,
that.
they are.
I've gone
They
through
agreed
that.
they
So
would do
then if
that.
they're going to write
Department.
that, if you say they're going to write that, then there's no problems with that, including as an item on the vote this evening.
No problem.
They do it.
So inside that
That's no
security
problem.
trailer is a spill management kit and somebody trained to use it. I mean, that's in their plan.
Right, I mean, saying it's Amazon household goods, There's all sorts of things Amazon sells. I buy certain things. There's hazardous paints, there's paint thinners, there's all sorts of things that it's not just gonna be, goods that are non-hazardous. It'll be whatever they sell, I assume.
It's on the plan, I think, note 5, the no hazardous materials, like, it's not hauling hazardous materials, like if that van delivers a can of paint thinner to your house, then that's not considered hazardous to
Yeah,
transport. So,
Right, but it's still a flammable that if there's a fire or something.
so we do have spill management, trained people on site to take care of that. And if the spill is too big, there's a plan for that. And they call the fire department, they call Clean Harbors, and, we reviewed this at the last meeting.
Yes. But we'll
Well, it's
have
just,
it,
we haven't seen a plan. We saw the plan for North Andover.
okay,
That's all.
Right, and I said it was going to be updated with all the local numbers and all that.
yes. Okay. You want to defer to deliberations? Get this information.
And I'd say we don't really need to see that plan.
No, as long as we know it's gonna exist. But I mean, should there be a note on this plan?
I can't sit this
Oh.
long.
I thought you were staring me down.
No, I'm not putting you through any.
No, I appreciate the thought that's going into this a lot.
Anything else, folks? John?
Do that.
No, well, let's see.
Well, we'll do it
The
again.
only other question that I had, and it's probably not economically feasible for you guys to even use them anyways, but reefer trucks. You wouldn't be
No.
storing reefer trucks with self-generators on them. Okay.
Did you want to suggest that as a condition as well?
I don't think it's cost effective for them to run.
Okay,
a
sure.
generator
I'm just
for-
asking
for
to-
something
That's
sitting
not a
over
problem.
24 hours.
Just ask.
Would you rather?
And I
I'm trying to get ahead of it and write it down.
You can add, They already said they won't be doing it, so an add-on's not gonna hurt anybody. Except for me right now. So I don't know how the board feels about that, but.
We'll talk about it in deliberations.
Okay.
Cringe every time I see you move.
I cringe every time I move.
You can, I mean, if the board was inclined to support this with the hours that are less than what we've proposed, and that became a problem, would the board allow us to come back and at least ask for a modification and give an explanation why? We certainly could come back and ask, couldn't we?
It would have to be done as another public hearing. It could
Yes.
not be done without that being
Yes.
part of the process.
That's what
So
we,
you considering you run for 3 to 6 months and you find that
yes.
your hours in the neighborhood gets a better understanding of what the flow is and the noise and so forth, and then you're coming back, or you're going to be coming back immediately?
We don't know what the response will be on the
This is
limitation.
Regarding going back to
Either way.
Amazon with that information.
Yes. We don't want to drag you through any.
Then that would have to be another whole.
We'd have to renotice. We understand that.
So I think we could change the plan to say maximum 14 a day,
Okay.
right? That's not an issue. It's just the hours of operation. They knocked out a whole shift for this. They've got a 24-hour security guard there, 24-hour manager there,
There's 2 people there?
or same in one, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I think
somebody's managing the vehicles coming in and out and all that, so. They put a lot of effort into doing everything that,
I'm trying to find you a pathway to get your stuff in there. And I don't see anybody in town signing off on 5 to 12. I don't even know if these guys are gonna sign off for 7 to 9. I'm saying that's my personal threshold for people that are living across the street. And there's quite a few people living across the street. 91, I think you said? 65 units, so if you have 2 people per unit,
change it.
I think think we let the board make their decision.
You can push a button, it turns red. I mean, obviously with the barrier fence.
The other option would be to request another continuance and take it back to Amazon before that. I'm just giving the options. I'm not telling you what to do.
So you, if the board feels they could make a contingency that you would approve it with the 7 to 7 and the maximum 14 trips a day, as, or whatever it is, yeah, 7 to 9, is that what you're saying? If the original doesn't get approved, then that would be something that you would.
I will bring it up and.
May I just,
Basically, we're saying change it to that now.
the conditions that I've gleaned from the discussion, plus the standard conditions that the board usually puts on an application, can I just run them down so that everybody is on the same page? The standard condition that the board generally puts on is the applicant must be granted site plan approval from the planning board, or this use doesn't happen. A note will be added to the plan that is presented to the planning board specifically stating that the approval is for the parking of no more than 61 axle trailers, no full rigs, or overnight parking of any other vehicles is permitted.
Have to have
Excuse
an
me.
operator's car.
Right, the security guy.
Security guard, yeah.
Yeah, he'd have to have a car somewhere.
Okay? Except for on-site personnel.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, a maximum of 14 trips per day, trucks per day. Hours of operation 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The hazard mitigation plan, that was the Andover example, will be rewritten for Plasto, and there'll be no refrigeration trucks on site. Oh, that's right, it was moving up to
I
16,
mentioned
that's
that.
right, the wiggle room.
The wiggle room.
So again, the
I mean,
applicant,
you know, if 14, if you know you need 14, 6 months from now, you're going to need 16. You're 15, so just do it now.
okay, one more time. The applicant must be granted site plan approval from the planning board, or the variance is void. A note will be added to the plan that is presented to the planning board specifically stating that the approval is for parking of no more than 61 axle trailers, no full rigs or overnight parking other than site personnel vehicles are permitted. A maximum of 16 trucks per day. Hours of operation 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The hazard mitigation plan will be submitted as written for Plasto and no refrigeration trucks on the site.
Do we need to add anything about that fence?
That's already
Fence that
applied
doesn't fall
and done.
down.
Yes, let's stay secure. We have to
It's
do
already
that.
in that site plan.
We'll definitely do that.
Oh.
The fence being secured.
I think it's a
the
planning board
securing
issue.
of the
That's
fence.
planning board issue.
The
Planning board.
acoustic
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
I mean, a regular chain link fence will withstand almost anything unless it fills with snow.
Right, but
like
once
fence
you add
snow.
the kite to it, so just some way to
But,
make sure.
but you add a board to that
That,
and
that's
that's gonna
for your
move.
benefit as well. I mean, you don't certainly want any lawsuits coming at you from a fence coming at somebody.
So can we take the acoustic fence off though? It solves all the problems. We're within the 7 to 7.
I think you might want to
7 to
not
9.
press your luck.
Okay.
We didn't need it anyway. Certainly don't need it now.
Okay. Let it go.
So are we done? Are we moving this into?
I think so.
I'm sorry, what? Well, no, we would close the hearing, then go into deliberations and take a vote during that. No, that's okay. That's okay.
I think I heard somebody else say that they had a question. He's going to need to get to a microphone, please.
And thanks for waiting this long, by the way.
Oh,
These usually don't go like this.
it's not a problem. Gary Denson, 56 Westville Road, the abutter. So if the plan is amended to 14 trips a day and the hours are amended, and it's on the plan, so what happens if they don't abide by that? What happens if we get 20 or 30 trucks a day? Or they're operating before the hour and after the hour? So what's the recourse?
Could I address that,
Business
Mr. Chair? If they have a planning board approved site plan, that becomes binding on them. If they are not in compliance in it, a couple of things can happen. The planning board can have a revocation hearing and revoke their site plan. It would there'd be some enforcement action that would happen along the way, notice of violation, final notice of violation. Then the planning board could take action to potentially revoke the site plan, or prior to that, the certificate of occupancy could be revoked until they're in compliance with the site plan.
Okay, but so where does the oversight come from?
From the code enforcement officer of the town.
So he's going to count trucks? He's
Well,
going to be out there at night seeing what goes on?
To be honest, the easiest way to make his life, or the way to make his life easiest is for you or some other neighbor to submit video from your doorbell camera.
I submitted video to
I know you
the
did.
board.
So time stamped and everything. It was great. So if they're not in compliance and you've got the video, then the code enforcement officer, if
Well,
you
they're
choose
not in
to,
compliance with the sound, but you heard that, and that was only one truck. And that was across the street.
yeah, that's a little dicey.
And the traffic backup? Did you see the video on that?
I did.
What do we do about that?
There's not much that can be done about that.
Well, if it's not approved, then it won't happen.
That's true.
None of this will happen. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Thank you.
So you've rested your case. Okay. I guess I'll use this. We're now in deliberations.
He's been dying.
I've been dying to do that. Would somebody like to make a motion?
If somebody wants to make the basic motion, I can repeat the conditions afterwards.
I got it right here.
You got it there,
I got
okay.
it. I think this is the right one. I move to grant the variance request from Strategic Real Estate Management LLC for variance from Article 5, Table 220-32B.B, and allow the lot at 45 Westville Road, Tax Map 26, Lot 36, to be used for parking of up to 61 axle trailers with the following conditions. The applicant must be granted site plan approval from the Plastow Planning Board.
All right, let me go from there. A note added to the plan that is presented to the planning board specifically stating that the approval is for the parking of no more than 61 axle trailers, no full rigs, or overnight parking of any other vehicles except site personnel, a maximum of 16 trucks per day. Hours of operation shall be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The hazard mitigation plan shall be updated for the town of Plastow, and no refrigeration trucks on site.
Second.
I think Mr. Gifford be on that. Sorry. Next time. Okay. Let me go to my variance criteria book. So, anything initially before we go through the variance criteria? Okay. Variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Who wants to speak to that? that the variance will not be contrary to the public interest.
All night. What's the matter with you? Keep going.
I'm sorry, what?
You've been speaking to him all night.
I know, but I want to get some participation. Personally, I'm not so sure that it's not contrary to the public interest.
Well, if you take the nearby public,
Yep.
who are obviously here tonight, it's certainly not in their interest. But the general public, that's a whole different category.
Well, it's always a whole different category. I mean, but one of the things we can't do is look at alternatives beyond the plan that's in front of us, in the motion that's in front of us. So the whole, well, you know, the way of thinking that it's more in the public interest than having a 1,000-seat theater there, which is obviously stupid.
Couldn't.
You know, with parking, you know,
Right,
but we
well, what I'm
can't
saying
take
is
that
you
into
have to-
account.
You have to take into account what could go on that lot.
No, just have to take into account this proposal.
Right. In other words, you can't say 1,000-seat theater because
Okay,
it
or,
could go on that
or a
lot.
strip mall that has 500 trips a day going to and from it.
Right.
Can't take that into account. You know, is there any circumstance that this is in the this is not contrary to the public interest?
I don't see it doing anything for the public.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mr. Unger.
I don't see it doing anything for the public.
And even with the hours proposed, you know, it's less negative, but it's still not, I'm having a hard time just getting beyond this. So somebody come up with an argument why it is in the public interest.
You would take a unused property and put it into use.
That is true.
I would assume a bunch of trailer trucks probably don't help our tax base at all.
They're movable. They don't count.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I would suggest the outhouse and
It's going to be a,
shack don't help the
it's going to
taxes.
be a parking lot either way you look at it.
Right. Well, let's see if we come up with some other ideas. We can come back to this. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. All right. I don't have that here. Sorry. You know,
What are you looking for?
I was looking for the applicant's variance criteria, answers to the variance criteria. I just don't want to go through this mess of paper.
Many months ago.
I need that back, please, afterwards.
Yeah, don't mix it in with yours.
I won't.
Let me clarify, that was the ones that were written out with the original application. That's not what was necessarily exactly what was stated this evening.
So we have this in writing.
That, yes, that was the original application, yes.
Okay. So the applicant says that, hold on a second. Wrong. Here we are. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, the objective of the C1 zone states, with today's reliance on automobile transportation and Plastows being the commerce center for an area beyond its boundaries, provisions need to be made within the town for areas to serve regional commercial centers. These areas should have good highway access, adequate off-street parking, proper lighting, police and fire protection, and adequate water and sewer services provided. This proposed use of the property falls squarely within the objective of the C1 zone. There will also be a 24-hour site manager coordinating the property's use. Therefore, its uses as proposed will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance. So, yeah, to the objectives of the C1 zone, that clearly is right there.
One.
Okay. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. To be substantially just, the losses to the individual must be less than the public's gain. Denying the variance, which will be less intensive than a public park and ride with minimal improvements, will not exceed the loss to the applicant and will be substantially unjust. In addition, this proposed use has been reviewed and supported by the Conservation Commission, the road agent, various other town people, and with only minor comments regarding plan notes, signage, parking, striping, all of which have been added to the plans. For those reasons, it is substantially just to grant this variance as proposed. Well, I frankly don't buy half of that. Whether or not Concom has approved it doesn't mean it's anything to substantial justice. And the police department and fire department, but that's just me speaking. So the loss to the individual here, if we don't grant, it must be less than the public's gain. And in this case, it's the 85 plus people, I would say, living around it on Westville Road.
Right.
Or near it. Whether or not other uses are more intense, they're not being proposed here. So I'm not interested in that. But
I mean, I realize that this is probably a lucrative venture, but the first meeting, we were told they originally bought the property to turn it back into a property,
Right.
park and ride for their own bus company. So there's still something that can be done there.
that's true. So while denying the variance does result in some loss to the applicant, to just having that open parking area, it just results in big gains to the general public who live around it. So I'd say it doesn't meet the substantial justice criteria. Any thoughts on that?
Right now, I'm in excruciating pain.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna let you guys take this on from here.
Okay. The proposed use will not diminish surrounding property values. So both sides on this have given us letters from realtors and appraisers. If I can summarize, the two appraisers that provided the applicant's letters basically said they concluded, we don't know, you have to do a more thorough analysis. While at least one letter that the abutters provided actually said this will absolutely have a 30% hit on property value. I have a hard time not, and the applicant is who has to give us the data to show that they go above and that they meet the criteria. The abutters are not required to have, to convince us that to their perspective. So given that the abutters were able to give us information, numeric information, and the applicants were only able to give us things that said, we don't know, you have to do a more thorough study. I'm not seeing how they meet that. Am I missing something?
Well, the abutters, I believe, came from sales, real estate salespersons and not from certified appraisers.
No, one of the final one that we got in the last letter was a certified appraiser. Yeah. The Stanhope. He was an appraiser.
Okay, then we go on to literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance impose an unnecessary hardship. You know, one of the things the applicant leans on under the hardship part is the part that part of this property is wetlands. The back part of the property is wetlands. But if you go up and down 125, especially north of there, a lot of those commercial properties have a lot of wetland. Westville Supply Area certainly does. Over by Tractor Supply, the back of that's wet. That's like a standard. This is not unique. So I'm just not seeing that as a valid point on this. Let's look at the second rung. The proposed use is reasonable. I don't know, thoughts on that, folks? Is this a reasonable use of the property?
Well, it's certainly set up for it. It's a parking lot.
Okay. Well, that's true. That is true. So how do we want to, you want to discuss this or you want to go right to a vote?
I still can't really get past the real estate issue where two people say it's anecdotal evidence and we need a better study, and other people say that it's going to affect the residential property. And I realize this is not a residential zone anymore, but you do have a bunch of people that own condos and properties right there.
Right. And that condo building is not going to go magically poof and turn into an office building tomorrow.
None of them will.
Right.
I mean, they'll be there indefinitely. You don't knock down condo complexes.
Do we have any idea of how long this lease is?
Don't know.
Okay.
Michael, Jim? Are we ready to go to a vote, folks, or do you want to discuss things more?
I'm fine.
I think we're ready for the vote.
Yeah, I think with the,
Okay.
third time around in this discussion here tonight, that I don't know what else we would have to discuss.
Okay. Dee, would you call the roll?
Michael Murray,
No.
Jim O'Brien,
No.
Peter Belo,
No.
Jim Unger,
No.
Jonathan Gifford.
Abstain.
I'm gleaning from the discussion that it would be, did not meet on the public interest, substantial justice, property value, and hardship.
Right. And we have set this aside. This is yours.
Thank you.
So we have two more.
I have two more things, but if you want to go, you don't have to be in these things, and I don't need to get glasses from you tonight, so don't worry about that. So,
Sorry, guys.
No,
I
you-
abstained because I can't even.
You're a hero staying this long.
I should have thought of that.
so there's two more things that I have for you real quickly here, folks. I put together took a look at your rules of procedure and your bylaws and put together the draft schedule for the 2025 applications and meeting deadlines. This is this is based on having them the last Thursday of each month with the deadline for the application 15 days ahead.
Yep.
I just did want to call out to you that the January one ends up being in the second week. The December meeting ends up being the second week in January because both Christmas and New Year's fall on those Thursdays.
Okay.
So it pushed it out a little further than it usually does.
Okay.
So if I could ask the board to make a motion and a vote on this?
I move that we accept the zoning board of adjustment schedule for 2025.
Thank you.
I'll second it. Oh,
Thank you.
either way.
May I call the roll?
Yeah, please.
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Bealow,
Yep.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray.
Yes.
And the last one is,
I love the changes.
I was requested to make some certain changes. The most significant ones was the increase of the application fee due to the increase in legal noticing in the newspaper from 125 to 200 to kind of hedge it so it doesn't have to do it too quickly again. The other change is in the expectations that the applicant is given so that they know what to expect. Just to reiterate to them that it's the applicant's responsibility to provide any evidence necessary to support their request for relief. And there's a change halfway down the page, instead of saying that night, to change it to at your scheduled public hearing for a little more clarity to it.
Yep.
And then on the application form itself, changing the Department of Building Safety to zoning office,
Saw that. Yep.
which could be either in the Department of Safety or separate. And then I made some clerical changes to the how to find a butters list based on changes in technology.
They look great. Let's do the vote. You guys ready to
I move that
vote?
We accept the revised application instructions and associated appendices.
Second.
Hey! May I call the roll?
Yes, please.
Peter Bealow.
Yep.
Jim Unger.
Yes.
Michael Murray.
Yes.
Jim O'Brien.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else, folks? I just want to make sure before we close the meeting. Okay. This is number 245.
No, you just closed the meeting.